Y2K show has been entertaining from the West Coast for 21 years.
Oh my God!
Yeah, you know who it is. It's your boy KRTZLER. I know you heard my slap Frisco tales. Check this shit out, man. It's murder after dark in Madtown. Yeah. I'm on 3rd Ave, heading downtown to a photo shoot on El Camino. Me and my homies bob way too deep in the cherry red imp in the old school Rico. Me and my peoples in 2 white pits. One night, mommy in a thick white bitch. Sitting on my lap when the big old tits all up in my face. Can't even take a hit of this green leaf doja. I'm over, lean on the door as we bend the corner. Hit a
Thank you for watching the Y2K show.
Hey man, I've been out here. I don't know what time it is now, but I've been out here since like 8, 9 o'clock this morning. And I told myself last month that I would do this, so I'm doing it right now. I told myself last month what I would do is I would go out and buy some groceries, spend some money, you know, give somebody cash for their food stamps and stuff, and then I would go out and buy them food. And so here I am, out buying them food. I bought them food. So as you can see, my chair is doing what it's worth. I'm getting more value out of my chair than you know you could imagine. I'm breathtaking. I'm a little winded too, but look, I got a basket full of groceries right there to share with the homeless. I got some hot dog buns and some hamburgers. I don't know if they're gonna be able to cook out here or not, but if they can't, I'll just take it home, cook it, bring it to them when I'm done. When I get it all ready, I'll bring it back out to them. I got chips, I got waffles, I got soda, I got ribs. You know, I can cook them. I got this ham, pastrami. I got me some Rockstar, of course. Then I got them some tuna, some menudo. I tried to get cans that had an opener on the top of them. I got on some chili, some hormel. Bread over there. Back here, I got on some apple fritter. I got some Hot Pocket. I got some puffed cheese puffs. I got some top ramen, pastaroni. Down there, I got the goldfish. I got an 18-pack of chips. I got multiple bags of pastaroni. I hope they got hot water somewhere. Then back up in here. Let me put that back over there. Like my new tray. Look at that tray. Look at that tray. It's sitting on there like it was born there. And it's stable and it is on. Look at me in that basket. The extra large basket. And then I got the other basket down here. It's got orange juice and stuff in it. And some sodas. But I just wanted to stop so that I could record all of what I have here. Now I'm gonna go over and I'm gonna open these bags up, and whatever they can't use, I'll keep and fix it for them. Bring it out to them done when I can. Okay, let's go.
if not of Jewish and Moorish self-identification or public labeling as such. A little further in the introduction of the book, it says in 1624, the West Indies Company made the decision to plant colonies in North America. Not surprisingly, given what we have already seen of the English strategy, the company used Sephardim as antagonists in the first onslaught. They used the Sephardic people. The earliest settlers were Walloons. Remember, Walloons are just like the Huguenots, Moorish people, a lot of them, Protestant refugees from the southern Netherlands who displayed willingness to risk wives and children towards immigration, because a lot of the time it might mean death if they stuck around with the Catholics trying to get rid of them. As we have witnessed happening repeatedly from Roanoke to Jamestown, from Plymouth Rock and Boston to the shores of South Carolina and Maryland, former Sephardim and Moors now surfacing in various hues of Protestantism, were placed aboard ships and transported from the Western Europe to North America. All right. They were put on ships, aboard ships, Deuteronomy 28, ships, and transported Middle Passage, right, from Western Europe to North America. Sephardics and Moors, all right, Maryland, all right, we're going to get into Maryland today. And it says here, we're all the way in chapter 7 now. You guys have read along most of the book already with me from the preface, introduction, all the previous chapters. Make sure to catch the previous videos if you're new to this. Great information that we've gone over, different states. It says here we're in chapter 7, Maryland, Catholic in her taste. The most salient aspect of Maryland's colonial era for our thesis is not its history or heroes per se, for it boasts little in either category, but rather its ordinary colonists. These, as we shall show, resemble a veritable United Nations of immigrants of often non-Christian, eager to avail themselves of Maryland's lax entry laws. The colony's sandy Atlantic shoreline, the endless Chesapeake marshes, and numerous inlets served as easy landing places for surreptitious disembarkations, whether of passengers or cargo. Maryland's advantages were not all spiritual. If tobacco figured as the colony's biggest cash crop and export, it was Maryland's where the bulk of it was grown, all right? And tobacco was grown there a lot. For it rapidly outstripped Virginia. Even though Maryland product was not so fine, it was less expensive. During its heyday, it supplied perhaps half the needs of Britain, France, and Germany, typically through Scottish factors. Historians often treat Virginia and Maryland as one. The Chesapeake colonies were a region dominated by scattered plantations. Maryland's population, so goes the orthodox account, was overwhelmingly composed of the drifting poor of England, arriving as indentured servants. All right, we got the previous videos on indentured servants and all these people that were landed in Maryland. Okay, remember, let's go back to the previous presentations and remember how many were being brought over here and ending up in the plantations, right? Working in these tobacco and sugar plantations. Who? Europeans, right? Indentured servants. The colony's whole pattern of life reflected little more than the British county, with its parish church and landed gentry transplanted to a new world setting. Underneath the tidy veneer, however, the beginnings of Maryland harbor many mysteries and just plain contradictions. Here we will draw on James Walter Thomas' Chronicles of Colonial Maryland, 1900, as our primary source for establishing Maryland's chronology, and then have recourse to the several extensive colonial families of Maryland volumes to discuss the settlers. On the 5th of March, 1634, two aptly named ships, the Ark and the Dove, arrived at the mouth of the Potomac River. On board was Leonard Calvert, who was to govern the province under the proprietorship of Caecilius Calvert, 2nd Baron Baltimore. His older brother, Baron Baltimore, reasoned that to make his domain profitable, he needed to acquire colonists whom he could tax, and therefore, under the conditions of plantation, every freeman who came to Maryland was to be awarded 100 acres of land for himself, a like quantity for his wife, every child over 16 and each servant, and 50 acres for every child under 16 years of age, to be held by him and his heirs and assigned forever. All right, so you see the deal they were getting all these deals. They needed people to colonize, and this is what they were offering all these people. And of course, a lot of people took it. In 1641, these grants were reduced to 50 acres and 25 acres, respectively. Very importantly, no restrictions on the nationality of the settlers were imposed. They didn't care who it was. While it is true that by 1636, the grants were restricted to persons of British and Irish descent, By 1648, they were reinstated for persons of French, Dutch, and Italian descent. Notably, these were countries heavily populated by Sephardic conversos, as well as Moriscos or Moors. In 1683, it was reconfirmed that lands were again available to all persons willing to purchase them. Undoubtedly, these were the most lenient freeholder opportunities available in British North America. They would and did attract many of those displaced by the Inquisition. All right, what is the Inquisition again? When Ferdinand and all of them, remember, they were like, let's get rid of the Jews and the Moors. The Inquisition, the Holy Inquisition, forcing Christianity to the Jews and the Muslims by force. Following Thomas' account, we learned that William Pache, Uriah Forrest Silva, and Clement Holiday Drumtoth were appointed state commissioners at the conclusion of the Revolutionary War. St. Clement's Manor, 1659-72, had as landholders Arthur de la Haye, Hebrew letter, John Gee, another Hebrew letter, John Green, of foreign complexion, Benjamin Hammond, Christopher Carnell, Hungarian Scottish, note the Hebrew Theophoric Al suffix, John Goldsmith, a typical Jewish trait, Roland Mays, example Mays after the month, and John Mansell, Hebrew Victor. Among others, by 1760, Anthony Simis, Hebrew descendants, Moses Tabbs, Hebrew cook, butcher, William Kennedy or Kennedy, Candia, Candiani or Kandi, and Lee Massey, Hebrew, were serving as vestrymen of the Poplar Hill parish. Okay, continues, says Maryland's colonists. With that brief introduction to the state, we are going to explore now the identities of some of Maryland's colonial era settlers, the names of whom we believe will seem both unusual and familiar by now to the reader. We retained a variable spelling of names to show, among other things, how a Hebrew or Arabic name could gradually become more English sounding in as short a time as a single generation, all right? How they were anglicizing the names. Edeliah Adams married James Bakes on 14 April 1748. Edeliah Adams Bakes was mother of the following children: Jesse, James, Daniel, Sabra, Sarah, and Stephen. Adams is a common Sephardic surname. Edeliah Adams Dakes and her husband, James Dakes, who bears a Greek surname meaning Minyan, named a child Sabra, non-biblical Hebrew for a cactus flower. Alifi, or Alif, Arabic Joseph Alif of Angola Neck, died leaving a will dated 13 November 1700. Mention our wife Bridget, son William, daughter Bridget, wife's son Ebenezer Jones, witnessed by Thomas Carey, Lada Greek, Carey, Roger Corbett, Eliza Simmons. The subject Joseph Alif carries a Morisco Islamic surname, all right? Morisco Islamic surname. Alif, first letter in alphabet leader. The name of his township, Angola Neck, suggests this may have been a Portuguese settled community in Maryland, all right? Angola means Portuguese, huh? All right. Ali, it says Arabic. Ali, the Ali family of Queen Anne County was present in Maryland by 1730. This family married into the Mason family and were indentured for a time to Thomas Ringgold of Chester. Ali is obviously of Sephardic or Morisco origin, example Ali, and the Ringgold family is Sephardic, as we shall later show. All right, all these people. Are or Ari is markedly Arabic Morisco surname. It means lion. Ariel, right? Ariel, Ari, the symbol for the tribe of Judah. David Ari married Hannah Jadwin in 1695. David Ari Planter died leaving a will dated 19 January 1714, 5. Named were children John, Esther, and Deborah. The will stated that if the children were not properly cared for, George Bowers was to take them in charge And if he be deceased, they were to be under the care of the Quaker quarterly meeting. David and Hannah were the parents of John, Deborah, and Debrew, who married Benjamin Peratt and Esther. All right. So these Arabic Morisco people talking about, hey, let the Quakers take care of our kids, if anything. All right. Why? Because remember who the Quakers are. Joseph Array, or Aree, brother of David Aree, married Jane Clark, born 1688. She married first in 1704, Benjamin Peratt, married second, Joseph Aree, and married third, William Scott. A lot of husbands. Joseph Aree died leaving a will dated 6 November 1728. The heirs named were sons-in-law Eleazar and William Peratt. Joseph was the father of Mary. David noted in the will of his cousin Esther, and Jonathan on 5 of November 1762, Jonathan Eyre and Enoch Morgan and Sarah his wife conveyed to John Jenkinson and Joseph Berry 3 acres whereon the Tuckahoe meeting house and graveyard came to be for the use of the people called Quakers. All right, you see who donated that land to the Quakers? Morisco people. Jonathan Aree died leaving a will dated 8 December 1767. Mentioned were cousins Sarah, William, and John Tillotson, and friend Edward Shetham. Executor was John Tillotson. Witnesses were John Corsi, Michael Green, Philip Santee, and Abraham Dillahunt. Note that these Arees were Quaker and had marital or business dealings with other persons bearing Jewish Sephardic surnames. Example, Peratt, Corsi, Green, Santee, and Dillahunt. Barney, also Sephardic. The Francis Barney family carries a Sephardic surname and married into the Perkins family. The wife's given name is Greek, Araminta. The use of Greek names was common among Mediterranean Jews who had become Hellenized as early as 300 BC. Estate appraisers included William Racine, Persian for prince, and Aquila, Spanish for eagle or águila. Jacob Isaac von Bibber married a woman named Christiana, converso name. Isaac Mateus and Henry van Bibber or Bibber were brothers, sons of Jacob Isaac van Bibber, a Hollander. Isaac van Bibber, son of Jacob Isaac van Bibber, was naturalized 25 March 1701. Isaac van Bibber, perhaps the original spelling, or Bibber, almost like Berber, right? Died leaving a will dated 14 September 1723 to son Jacob, daughters Hester, wife of Jacob Gooden, Christina, and Veronica. The sons Peter and Isaac, each an equal share. The son Jacob, son-in-law Jacob Gooden, personally. Veronica van Bibber married John Birmingham. Christina van Bibber married Peter LaRoux, or LaRue. Hester van Bibber married Jacob Gooden. The original surname of the Van Bibber family above was Isaacs, a Jewish surname. All right, it was Isaacs, they're saying. They were called Van Bibber upon arriving in Maryland. You see that? They were actually the Isaacs, because that is the town in Holland from which they emigrated. Van Bibber is also known to be a Jewish surname. Think of the philosopher Martin Buber, or Buber, and is found among the Melungeons, a Sephardic Morisco Native American ethnic group in Appalachia. Notably, the family also had business dealings with Edward Cooper of Jamaica, an individual known to be the Jewish and denoted in records as mulatto, half Indian, not half African, as often imagined, okay? Half Indian and what? Sephardic, Morisco. Half Indian and what? Morisco. Half Indian and what? Morisco or Sephardic, not African, as often imagined. William Boone, son of John Boone, married Margaret Jump. William died leaving a will dated 22 July 1728, naming sons Jacob, Joseph, Abraham, Benjamin, Moses, and daughters Elizabeth, Mary, and Rachel. Boone, or Boone, was a common Sephardic surname derived from buen, bono, bon, all meaning good, all right, like bueno, right, buen, as we have seen. Note the Hebraic naming patterns in this family. Briscoe family, The Briscoe or Bresca is commonly accepted by researchers as Sephardic surname. Philip Briscoe was born about 1647 and died in 1724, having married Susanna Swan, daughter of Edward Swan. Their children were John, Philip, Edward, married Susanna Sly, daughter of Robert Sly, and Priscilla Goldsmith, Jewish surnames, George, Sarah, Judith, Susanna, Anne, James, Elizabeth, and Israel. Parmenas, Greek. Briscoe was born in 1749 and married Anne Briscoe, daughter of Gerard Briscoe and Ruth Macmillan. Their children included a son who married Harrison Briscoe, a daughter Elizabeth who married George Cole Briscoe, Sally Truman, Polly, Gerard, Robert, Fanny, Patsy, Bolivar, Spanish, Rebecca, and Hezekiah. Jeremiah Briscoe married Elizabeth Harlan. Their children were Phoebe, Silas, George, John, Cassander or Cassandra, Greek, and Sarah. With the Briscoe family, we have clear evidence of multi-generational endogamy at the first cousin level, practiced to a great extent among Sephardic Jews and Muslims during this time. Robert Crouch died leaving a will dated 30th of October 1711, naming wife Mary, sons Robert, John, Jacob, daughters Rose, Hebrew, Rhoda, and Ellie, Rachel, and her son, and grandsons John and Jacob Taylor. The estate of Robert Crouch was administered by Jacob Crouch, and the legatees were John Crouch, Alice Layton from Leiden in the Netherlands, Rachel Carey, Anne Disharon, Rose Gordon, and Robert Crouch. In this entry, Anne Disharoni is named as a legatee of John Crouch. Disharoni is the Gaelicized rendering of Sharon, a Hebrew place name and surname. Example, Arian Sharon, Prime Minister of Israel. Davis. There were multiple Davis families in Maryland. Davis was one of the most common Jewish surnames in England during the 1600s and 1700s. Later, it was the second best known English Jewish surname. Among these, the Philip Davis family married into or had business dealings with several likely Sephardic families. Example, those of Philip Raisin, Persian for Prince, Charles Ringgold, Abraham Iris, George Cooper, and Simon Worrell. John Davis died leaving a will dated 13 July 1789, naming sons Reuben, Eli, Stephen, and Daniel, and daughters Leah, Tabby, Nellie, and Sinah. Hebrew. Also mentioned were William Hopwell, George Disharum, father-in-law of Reuben Davis, Hetty Sturgis, Austin Nellie Austin, and wife Claire Trower Diaz. Portuguese. Tabitha Davis, daughter of Beecher Davis, married her cousin Levin Buchan on May 1, 1765. Benjamin Davis and Ishmael Davis witnessed the will of Matthew Rain, example Rain, or 30 January 1737. Benjamin Davis witnessed the will of Elizabeth Tingle on 18 May 1740. Children of Benjamin and Mary Davis were Anne, Matthias, Leah, Hebrew name for model, mother, Mary Abijah, Sephora, and Sophia. Daniel Davis died leaving a will dated 7th of May 1747. To son William, he left a 50-acre tract, Battle Ridge, to son John his plantation house, and to 5 youngest children, Isaac, Daniel, James, Levine, and Judah Davis. Personal items. William Davis, son of Daniel Davis, died leaving a will naming wife Patience and children Spencer, Elizabeth, Salita, Jiddish, non-biblical, and Keziah, Arabic, Hebrew, incense. John Davis immigrated to Maryland in 1666. He died leaving a will to maintain younger children, John, Tamerlane, David, Francis, Sibylla, Greek, and Eliza. To daughters, Frances, Sibylla, and Eliza, he left 600 acres. To granddaughter Tabitha, Arabic, Dorcas in Greek, Davis, he also left some land. To son Tamberlin Davis, he left the residue of Tabitha's portion. Son David also received land, and youngest daughter Elizabeth, some personal items. To wife Eliza and her children John, Tamberlin, David, Francis, Sibylla, and Eliza, he gave the residue of his estate. We propose that these several Davis families were Jewish. What is different about the last one is the use of the Persian name given Tamberlane or Tamerlane for a son. Tamerlane, 1336-1405, was born near Samarkand, Uzbekistan. He was an extraordinary conqueror whose domain ultimately spread from Turkey to India. By religion, he was Muslim. Thus, the use of his name as given name for the Davis family son strongly suggests that they were themselves Muslim or had come from Turkey in the general region in which Tamerlane had lived. Okay? Again, naming and marriage patterns tell the story. John Davis, on the other hand, has sons and daughters carrying definitive Judaic names. Example, Reuben, Leah, and Sanaa. He was related by marriage to George de Sharon, or Tabitha Davis. His daughter married her cousin Levin Buchan. Within the Benjamin Davis family, Benjamin and Ishmael witnessed Matthew Rainey will, and again, the naming pattern for children was strongly Judaic. Example, Abijah, Zipporah, and Sophia, Greek. Daniel Davis also gave his children overtly Judaic names, Isaac, Levin, Levine, and Judah. Daniel's son William gave two of his children non-biblical Hebrew Aramaic names, Solita and Keziah, a name also used by Moriscos, and had Levin de Sharon be one of his witnesses. Isaac England. Jews often took their surnames from the country's provinces or towns in which they lived. Example, Isaac of York. Here, we have an Isaac England who arrived in Maryland by 1714 and married a woman named Rebecca, a classically Jewish name. They were members of the Cecil Friends Meeting House. Quaker affiliation was a common cover for crypto-Judaism. Again, say what? Again, what? What is Quaker what? What is Quaker? Quaker affiliation was a common cover. It was a common cover for crypto-Judaism. A lot of those Quakers were actually crypto-Jews, crypto-Moors, people of color. They had marital or business relationships with William Simcha, Hebrew but non-biblical, and Gaspar Hood, right? Falconer were common Sephardic surnames. I just want to remind everybody that Hood in the Islam is Eber, I believe, yes, of what we've been reading in the past books. It says here Falconer, it says Falcon, Falco, Falconer were common Sephardic surnames. This family was in Maryland by 1707 and maintained a merchant trade with kinsmen in London. Business dealings included partnerships with Richard Staggs, Francis Spearman from Speyer in the Rhineland, a Jewish center, David Barclay in London, Daniel Phillips in London, physician Joshua Van Sant and Samuel Roux, French for street. This family also belonged to the Cecil monthly meeting. Isaac Faulkner, all right, Faulkner is Falconer or Falcon. Faulkner is Falcone, son of Isaac and Dorcas Faulkner, died leaving a will dated 18 April 1751 to his brother Abraham Faulkner. Isaac left and given the bulk of his estate to his wife and children. The will was witnessed by William West, John Barrick, and Mary Harwood. John Falconer married a woman named Sarah at November Court 1714. It was presented that Thomas Falconer, laborer on 15 November in the 12th year of the reign of the Queen at Y100, committed adultery with Sarah Falconer, wife of John Falconer. Witnesses included Edward Hyatt, Arabic, and Eleanor Falconer. A verdict of not guilty was returned. John Falconer or Faulkner died leaving a will dated 20th of March 1727. The will was witnessed by Michael Hussey, Richard Moore, and Jane Manor. On February 3rd, 1767, Henry Kaysen, merchant, and his wife Esther and Mary Els Spencer conveyed to John Falconer 127 acres of land. Burton Faulkner died leaving a will dated 12 December 1774. His son Jonathan and daughter Esther were administrators. Mentioned also were Ruth and Benjamin and a slave named Monday. Here we have the Falconer family, a common Jewish surname. Isaac and Abraham Faulkner are brothers. Isaac's will is witnessed by John Baruch, whose surname is Hebrew for blessed, Baruch. All right, Baruch. Another Falconer, Thomas, was charged with adultery with his brother's wife. He may have been exercising the duty of levirate law, by which a brother marries his sister-in-law once she is widowed. A witness was Edward Hyatt. Hyatt is Judeo-Arabic for tailor. John Faulkner's will was witnessed by Michael Hussey, also a Hebrew-Arabic surname. All right. So the whole point of so far the chapter is to let you know that these early colonists of Maryland, and most of them have carrying these Sephardic Morisco names, and they have the background of Muslim, the way they're marrying and their naming patterns. Continues, says Freeman. Another very common Jewish surname is Freeman. All right, Morgan Freeman. The translation for Franco, use of merchants free to travel between different countries. All right, Francos. For merchants free to travel between different countries. Merchants. Who's the merchants? The Freemans. In German, the word appears as Frank or Friedman, as in the case of the Holocaust diarist Anne Frank, or the Philadelphia, New York aristocratic family of Franks. In Dutch, it is Friedman, and in Spanish, Franco. This usage began with the Crusades, when the Franks and Norman French military carved out a kingdom in the Levant and monopolized trade through the Templar Knights. William Freeman was in Maryland by 1668. His son Isaac married Hannah Comegys, Turkish. Isaac's executors were William Loveland, John Falconer, and John Scott. Later, children married into the Rossin family twice, the Wilmer and the Ringgold families. It says here Gale. Also Sephardic is the Gale surname, as in the Colombian actor Gael Garcia Bernal. John Gale, or Gale, was in Maryland by 1699. The family was Quaker and married into a Rossin family. A son married a woman named Bathsheba Lamb, example, the Paschal Lamb of Passover. Children included James, Malachi, Mary, Catherine, and Rosamond. Hepburn family. This family, carrying a Palestinian surname, arrived in Maryland by 1665. They intermarried with the Catholic, example, son of Castle, Phillips, Forbes, and Briscoe Sephardic families. Mordecai Jacob was born 24th of May, 1714, and died about 1771. He was the son of Benjamin Jacob and wife Alice. In December 1745, he married Jemima, Arabic. Jemima is Arabic, all right? On Jemima, Jemima is Jewish, Sephardic, Jewish, Arabic. Isaac, so Jemima Isaac, that's her name. Children were Ruth, married Isaac Hall. Benjamin, married Eleanor Odell, Berber surname. Mordecai, Sarah, Alice, Isaac, George, Jemima, and Eleanor. The will of Mordecai Jacob was probated on May 8, 1771. The witnesses were Benjamin Gaither, John Isaac, and Joseph Peach Pershing. Clearly, this was a self-aware Jewish family, even though living publicly as Christians, right? Remember crypto conversos, so-called new Christians, right? Secret Jews, secret Christians. A Jacob's man has married an Isaac's woman, and many of the children's names are Hebrew. In this case, as in one above, the name Mordecai is likely the direct indicator of a family that is consciously Jewish. Few, if any, Christians would use this appellation, which derives from ancient Hebrew and has important associations with the legend of Esther celebrated at Purim. Sephardic Jews favorite high holy day. Michael Lascelles or Lascelles, Arabic Lascelles. Oh man, I went to Lascelles College for a little bit. I went to, yeah, not a lot, but yeah, I didn't know that was Arabic. Lascelles, oh, Lascelles, Arabic, married Martha Cook in 1705 and died around 1742. His estate was appraised by P. Kennard and Francis Barney, Sephardic. Nathaniel Lascelles, an orphan son, was underage in 1736 when he was bound to Thomas Roos, all right, bound, all right, plasterer. He died March 1756. Thomas Ringgold and William Wilmer signed as Michael Lascelles' creditors. Nathaniel Lascelles and Alice Reason signed as his next of kin. Martha Lascelles filed the inventory on 15th of May, 1756. Note here the intersection of several Jewish families in financial and estate relationships: Lascelles, Reason, Barney, and Ringgold. Ralph Lowy was transported to the colony of Maryland by 1649 as an indentured servant, okay? Indentured servant. They didn't just go there. They were like so-called slaves. These were the first ones that were bringing over here to work in these plantations, right? Indentured servants. He married Rachel Hudson and died, leaving a will dated 5 December 1772. John Lowy, son of Ralph Lowy, married Tabitha on 11th of February 1775. John Lowy and his wife Tabitha sold land to Benjamin Dashiell. George Lowe, or Lowe, son of Ralph Lowy, married on 29 December 1754 Sarah Cotman, daughter of Ebenezer Cotman. The father's will was witnessed by Richard Green and Ralph and Hudson Lowe. Hudson Lowe had children, Levin and Samuel. The Lowe family has a Sephardic surname, example, Lowy, or Lowe, a play on Levi. Jacobs 1901-1906, which means lion. The ancestor arrived as an indentured servant, but we are not sure from what country. His descendant Ralph or Raphael married Rachel Hudson, and the family also intermarried with the Pates. Two of Ralph's daughters married into likely Sephardic families, the Henrys, Enriquez, the fourth most common Sephardic surname, and the Phillips family, as already mentioned, among the most common Jewish surnames during this time. Ralph's son John also marries a woman bearing a Jewish given name, Tabitha, as does his son George Sarah Cotman, daughter of Ebenezer Cotman. Tabitha is Aramaic for gazelle and was popular antiquity among the Jews, but is a name not found in the Bible. Massey, the Massey family in Maryland by 1743, they had business or marital ties with Gilbert Falconer, Daniel Toys, Aquila Peacock or Pavo, Pavoncello, a bird popular in Persia and Jewish legend, Samuel Davis, Nathaniel Hinson, son of the deer or hind, the tribe of Naphtali, William Minley, Italian Sephardic surname, Isaac Bower, Samuel Beck, Baek, Hebrew, and Zorobabel, French. Children's names included Zorobabel, Greek form of Hebrew, Zerubbabel, Elijah, Eliza, Nicholas, Greek, Aquila, Franco-Roman, Rebecca, Solomon, Ebenezer, Eliezer, Rachel, Enoch, Joshua, Farah, Arabic for joy, Hannah, Johan, Arimenta, Greek, Abigail, Lambert, Lucretia, Italian. The mixture of Greek, Hebrew, Spanish, Arabic, and Italian given names is strongly indicative of Sephardic ancestry. As there were Sephardic communities in all these locations, the name itself is believed to derive from the Hebrew maseh, deed, act, tale, used for Marcus in the public realm. Forms of the name include maseh, masa, mas, maxi, Huguenot, common in Virginia, and masa, Spanish. All right, a lot of the Huguenots had these. All right, it is instanced in Alexandria, Egypt, Port Said, Arabia, Corfu and Santi, Greece, Florence and Leghorn, Italy, and London, a trail of countries that seems to be commemorated in the first names of the Maryland family. The English branch of the family entered the British Isles with William the Conqueror and goes back to a Hammon, Hebrew Ammon, faithful, true, Massey. Descendants intermarried with the Ashley, Cooper, and Gist families, which we have seen to be very probably crypto-Jewish. Standard authorities Renee and Wilson explain Massey as a pet form of Matthew. All right. So now it just shows a little bit of the, genealogical trees or lines. It says here branch of Massey family in England and colonies. So just so you guys can see, so you guys can pause it if you like. And if you're interested in seeing the names, if it happens to be in your family or one of your last names or something like that, go ahead and pause it, take a good look at it. All right, take some screenshots. So they're breaking it down from Europe all the way to, I guess, to the Americas. All right, as you guys can see, it keeps going. We're breaking down a couple generations, a lot of generations actually. Now it says here, Mordecai Moore, a Quaker merchant and physician, died by 1721. He married first Ursula, second Deborah Hill. The first mention of Mordecai Moore is as a legatee of Nathaniel Ashcombe of Calvert County in 1687. His children were Richard, Deborah, Hannah, Mary, Heather, Elizabeth, and Rachel. Brian O'Melia, servant, and transported to Maryland about 1665, right? Indentured servant. He married Mary Lewis, 27, June 1676. She was the daughter of William and Sarah Lewis. Jacob Abrahams married Isabel O'Melia on 28th of May, 1685 at Betty's Cove Quaker Meeting House. Brian O'Melia above has married a similarly Jewish surnamed woman, Mary Lewis. A later child of their marriage, Isabel, married Jacob Abrahams at the Betty Cove Meeting House. We would argue that this family was Jewish and that the Quaker Meeting House likely conducted Jewish services. Benoni Phillips, son of John Phillips, first married Rosianna Elliott, daughter of John and Jane Elliott. Second, he married a woman named Comfort. He died having written a will dated 25 of June, 1742, leaving to his son, Thomas, the residue of Gloucestershire, unless he married one of the Lewises or Annons, in which case land to go to his brother, Jacob. He also left property to his son, Solomon, as well as to the sons, Jacob and Jeremiah. As mentioned earlier, Phillips was a very common Jewish surname during the 1600s to 1800s. Benoni is the Jewish nickname for Benjamin. Interestingly, Benoni's will prohibits certain assets from passing to his sons, John, if the latter should marry into the Lewis or Annan families, who would also appear to be Jewish. It may be that he was in the midst of becoming secularized and ceasing to be Jewish. Elijah Burnell was a witness to the will of Daniel Selby, written in 12 December 1694, along with Thomas Smith, John Purnell, John Russos, and Cornelius Shahan, Arabic. He was the father of the following children: William, who married his first cousin once removed, Mary Robbins, daughter of Thomas Robbins and Lemuel Chesed, Hebrew; William, son of John and Elizabeth Radcliffe; Purnell married Mary Elizabeth Fawcett, Arabic for Lord, daughter of Lambert and Levina, Hebrew; Fawcett, and was father of the following children: John, Catherine, Elijah, Benjamin, Mary, William, Leah, Azariah, Levi, Thomas, and Jephthah. John Purnell, born 1725, married his first cousin, Zipporah Purnell, daughter of John Purnell. Zipporah later married her cousin, John Radcliffe. These entries for the Purnell family suggest Sephardic origins. The witnesses to a will include John Russo, French Sephardic, and Cornelius Shahan, Dutch Morisco. Children are given non-biblical Hebrew names, example, Chesed, as well as Hebrew tribal names, example Levina and Levi, and there are first cousin marriages. Thomas Raisin was born 1640 in England and died in 1687 in Maryland. Some 90 rebels sailed on the ship Happy Return under Captain Washon after the Monmouth Rebellion of 1685. They were delivered to John Brownie and Company for Sir William Booth of Barbados. Thomas Rasson was sold to Colonel John Simpson. Here a Thomas Rasson, Persian surname meaning prince, has entered Maryland as a political prisoner, sold as an indentured servant. Thomas and Elizabeth had 7 children, all right? Again, people being what? Sold. And indentured servants. These are your so-called slaves in colonial times Maryland. Thomas and Elizabeth had 7 children. Philip, Mary, Thomas, John, Elizabeth, Sarah, and Francis. Philip Raisin died in 1717 and was buried at the Cecil Friends Meeting. Note that the Cecil Friends Meeting is the Quaker congregation to which several crypto-Jewish families belong. At the time of his death, Philip Raisin was overseer of the Cecil Monthly Meeting. Thomas Reed married Elizabeth. She married second Isaac Abrahams. Isaac Abrahams died leaving a will dated 14 October 1674. He gave Elizabeth her dower rights, left personally to George and Benjamin Parrott, to Sarah Reed, and to son Jacob all lands at 19 years of age. Elizabeth Abrahams died leaving a will dated 11 May 1675, giving personal items to William Southby and his daughter Elizabeth Southby. Elizabeth Reed, daughter of Thomas Reed, married William Southby at the house of Isaac Abraham, 29 January 1668. Sarah Reed, daughter of Thomas Reed, married James Frisbee. On 20th July 1688, James Frisbee and his wife Sarah gave to his brother-in-law Jacob Abrahams power of attorney to acknowledge a parcel sold to John Borum. Thomas Reed, son of Thomas Reed, died leaving a will dated 1665. The executor was Jonathan Ashman and his sister Sarah. The surname Reed usually meant red, as in the hair or a beard. In German, it was rendered as Roth, and in Spanish as Rosa. In the above passage, the wife of Thomas Reed was married Isaac Abraham, an obviously Jewish name, with whom she had a son, Jacob. The Parrott and Southby, or Sotheby, families are linked to the Reed-Abraham family and are the Frisbee and Ashman families. This pattern of interrelationships would seem to indicate the presence of a consciously Jewish community. With the Robbins family below, we find the same pattern of interaction among a group of families bearing Jewish surnames. Robbins is an anglicized form of Rabin or Reuben, a Hebrew tribal name. It is also rendered as Robbins in English and Rabinowitz in Eastern Europe. In the extras below, we find a Robbins marrying a Tillman. When the husband dies, Wilman Goldsborough marries her in traditional Jewish levirate pattern, one we have seen often before. The Daniel Hammer mentioned also bears a Jewish surname, as do the Money sisters, whose surname was likely anglicized from Gold or Gulder, money in German and Dutch, or else Munz. George Robbins married Henrietta Maria Tillman, daughter of Richard Tillman. Anna Maria, daughter of George, and Henrietta Maria Robbins married Henry Holiday Jomtov, or Shana Tova in Hebrew. The will of George Robbins was witnessed by William Sharp, Isaiah Parrott, Eleanor Robinson, and Thomas Ringgold. On 2nd of September 1747, William Goldsborough married his first wife Elizabeth's half-brother's widow, Miss George Robbins, who was then 40 years old and the mother of 6 children. Her maiden name was Henrietta Maria Tillman, and she was fourth child of Richard Tillman II and Anna Maria Lloyd. On April 1731, she married George Robbins, and 5 years later, she married William Goldsborough. On 28 February 1757, Daniel Hammer and his wife Anne, daughter and heir of Robert Ivy, and great-granddaughter and heir of Robert Smith, conveyed to Susanna Robbins 600 acres. Williams Goldsboro will was proved 5 November 1760, and it names several of the Robbins family members to wife Henrietta Maria Goldsboro, late dwelling plantation on Island Creek at her decease, to nephew Greenberry Goldsboro, son of brother John Goldsboro, to each niece Mary Money and Anne Money, daughters of late sister Mary Money, sum of $20 sterlings or 20 sterlings, 20 pounds sterlings, to each brother Robert, Nicholas, Charles, and John Goldsboro, one mourning ring, to niece Caroline Goldsboro, 20 sterlings, to nephew Greensbury Goldsboro's slaves, to son-in-law Thomas Robbins, track line near Choptank Bridge, to daughter-in-law Anna Maria Holliday, Margaret Robbins, Henrietta Maria Robbins, and Susanna Robbins, 10 sterlings each. The daughter-in-law goddaughter Elizabeth Robbins, 100 sterlings of Great Britain money, or 100 pounds sterlings, when she is aged 21, residue of estate to wife Henrietta Maria Goldsboro. Charles Ross, son of John Ross, married Naomi and died leaving a will dated 20 December 1722. Thomas was father of 11, born around about 1744. Peter Ross, possible son of John Ross, married Esther. Peter Ross died leaving a will dated 13 March 1762. Mentioned was Sabra Hammond. Ross, a corruption of Rose, was one of the most common Jewish surnames in England during the 1700s. Here we have Charles Ross marrying a woman named Naomi and having a son named Levin. We then have Peter Ross, likely his brother, marrying a woman named Esther and leaving property to Sabra, Arabic, Hammond for Hammon or Ammon, Hebrew. These naming patterns suggest a continuation of Jewish identity in Maryland for this family. Edward Skidmore arrived in Maryland from England in 1657 with a group that included Rice, Basil, Greek, Saunders, Alexander, Simons, Eleanor Abrahams, Ursula Duffy, and Elias Godfrey. The executor of Edward's will was Theophilus, Love God, Hebrew Jael, Hackett, Sephardic Arabic. Inventories on his estate were taken by Ebenezer Blackiston, example Blackstone, perhaps a dealer in ebony, and Isaac Harris, Jewish surname. Here again, we encounter a group of persons who are likely of Jewish ancestry, arriving together as a community. Samuel Tovey originally came from Bristol, England, emigrated to Maryland by 1675, and transported his wife Elizabeth and two children, Elizabeth and Samuel, to Maryland by 1679. Samuel was indentured to James Ringgold, all right? So just real quick, I just want you to see that these people weren't just being slaves to just any random people, like they were indentured themselves to specific, even people that were from the same cultural background. Even Sephardic Jews and Moors, they were indenturing themselves. A lot of them were just so they can help them come over here, have a job, and eventually they can get their freedom and freedom dues and get their own things going. Just wanted to point that out. Again, Samuel was an indenture to James Ringgold in 1676. Samuel's son married Mary Fuchs, or Fuchs in German for Fox, Jewish, and his son-in-law was Richard Kane. Example, Kohani. Tohi, or Tawi, is a derivative of the Hebrew letter Tov, Greek letter Tau. Garrett Van Sant, the son of Stoffel, Ashkenazic Van Sant, emigrated about 1651 from the Netherlands. He settled in New Utrecht, Long Island, where the records often refer to him as Garrett Stoffels. Example, Garrett, son of Stoffel. He was the father of Stoffel, Hebrew, Cornelius, Latin, Joshua, Hebrew, or Josiah, Harmon, corruption of Hebrew, Hiram, Albert, Johannes, Jacobus, Hebrew, George, Jacina, Hebrew, and Garrett, French. Stoffel Van Sant, son of Garrett, was born in the colony of New York about 1670 and took the oath of allegiance at New Utrecht in 1687. He moved to Bucks County, Pennsylvania. He married first Annetje Stoffels and second Rachel Corson, and joined the Bensalem Hebrew for Sons of Peace Dutch Reformed Church by certificate in 1710. All right, Bensalem. So what I want to point out here is that, the story goes that it was all these white, Christian English people, colonizing these areas, and that's why they're pointing this out in this chapter, that these families are not so English, they're not as English as we thought they really were. Continuing, it says Samuel Wikis mentioned his will marry Camel, Hebrew Arabic, Camel letter of alphabet, Sarah Nash, Richard Hale, and Henry Vizard, Arabic. The will was witnessed by Mary Miller and Mary Samuel. His will also mentioned the estate of George Gold Hawk. Legatees' names were Rachel Wicks and Richard March. De Soto in Spanish. All right, March is De Soto. Joseph, son of Joseph Wicks, married Alice, daughter of Michael Miller. One of their daughters was Mary, who married William Granger. Other daughters were Rachel, who married William Ruach, Arabic, Wind, Open Air Market, and Elizabeth, who married James Cuberford. Frances Wiley married first Elizabeth Wingate and second Rachel Wingate, both daughters of Philip Wingate. All right, so he married sisters. Frances and Elizabeth Wiley were parents of the following children: Angelo, Spanish or Italian; Elizabeth, Judaic; and Anastasia, Greek. Francis was also the father of Absalom. Francis and Rachel were parents of the following children: Francis, Molly, Wingate, Judah, and William. Francis Wiley had married two Wingate sisters, leaving children named Angelo, Judaic, Anastasia, Absalom, Diana, Judah, among others. His son Angelo later bought land from Edward Numar, Arabic. The naming and marriage patterns above suggest Sephardic Iberian ancestry, perhaps rather recently, as the name Angelo was used for the first-born son. Tillman family. We have reserved for last the Tillman family, one of the most illustrious in the history of the Maryland colony. This family produced governors, judges, generals, doctors, merchants. As we shall demonstrate, the history follows a remarkable, not to say egregious, pattern of Jewish endogamy. Richard Tillman, physician, born 1626, son of Oswald Tillman, a grocer of London, married Mary Foxley in England. They were the parents of Samuel, Mary, William, Rebecca, Deborah, and Richard. At March Court in 1668, George Hayes, Jewish surname, the Hebrew letter that stands for Hayim, life, servant to Richard Tillman, was judged to be 16 years old. Richard Tillman, son of Richard Tillman, married Anna Maria Lloyd, daughter of Philemon Lloyd, on 7th of January, 1700. Richard and Anna were the parents of Mary, who married James Earl Jr., the Philemon Richard, who married Susanna Frisbee, Henrietta Marita, who married first George Robbins in 1731 and second William Goldsborough in 1747, Anna Maria Tillman, who marries first William Hemsley and second cousin Colonel Robert Lloyd, William, Edward, James, and Matthew. Richard served in the Maryland Assembly from 1698 to 1702 and was a member of the Maryland Council from 1711 to 1739. He served as a court justice from 1695 to 1705 and from 1707 to 1709. He was sheriff from 1709 to 1711. In 1722, he was the chancellor of the province. In the military, he was a captain in 1706, lieutenant colonel in 1711, and colonel in 1716. On 25th of June 1766, as an indenture quadripartite was made between Richard Tillman and wife Susanna, James Earl, Edward Tillman, and Richard Tillman the Younger. A marriage was about to be solemnized between Richard Tillman the Younger and Elizabeth, daughter of Edward Tillman, and Edward agreed to pay a competent marriage portion to his daughter. William Tillman, son of Richard Tillman, was born 22nd September 1711 and married his first cousin Margaret Lloyd, daughter of James Lloyd, on 2nd of August 1736. William and Margaret were the parents of Anna Maria, who married Charles Goldsborough, Richard James Margaret, who married her cousin Richard Tillman, son of Matthew Tillman, Henrietta Maria and Mary, who married Edward Roberts. William was a county court justice between 1734 and 1760, served in the lower house of the Maryland Assembly from 1734 to 1738, deputy commissary, judge of the special court in 1744, and was a major in the militia by 1744. Edward Tillman, son of Richard Tillman, was born 3 of July, 1713, and married first Anna Maria Turbotte about 1738, second Elizabeth Shue in 1749, and third Juliana Carroll. Edward and Anna Maria had one child, Anna Maria, who married Bennett Shue. Edward and Elizabeth had 5 children, Richard, Edward, Benjamin, Elizabeth, who married her cousin Richard Tillman, son of Richard and Anna Maria, who married Charles Goldsborough. Edward and Juliana had 4 children, Matthew, Benjamin, Mary, who married her cousin Richard Tillman, son of Matthew, and Susanna. Edward was High Sheriff from 1739 to 1742 and served in the lower house of the Maryland Assembly from 1746 to 1750. He was a county court justice from 1743 to 1749, and in 1765 he was a member of the Stamp Act Congress. From 1776 to 1781 he served in the Senate. In the militia he was a captain by 1746 and colonel by 1755. James and Ann Tillman were the parents of Tench, who married his first cousin Anna Maria Tillman and served as aide-de-camp to General Washington during the Revolutionary War. Richard James, William, Philemon, Thomas Ringgold, Anna Maria, who married her first cousin William Hemsley, Elizabeth, who married her cousin James Lloyd, Mary, and Henrietta Maria, who married her cousin Lloyd Tillman, son of Matthew. James served in the Maryland Assembly, 1762, 1763, and then moved to Philadelphia, where he was elected a common councilman in 1764. He served as a member of the Council of Pennsylvania, 1767 to 1776, and was commissioned secretary of the Pennsylvania Land Office on January 1st, 1769. Matthew Tillman, son of Richard Tillman, was born 17 February, 1718, and adopted by his childless cousin, Matthew Tillman Ward, in 1733. He married cousin Anna Lloyd, daughter of James Lloyd and sister of his brother William Tillman's wife. Richard married his first cousin Margaret Tillman, daughter of William Tillman, in 1770. Secondly, he married another cousin, Mary Tillman, daughter of Edward Tillman Lloyd and Anna Maria. So it's kind of like all the same people. They just kind of repeating them and showing their connections to each other. Who had married a cousin, Tench Tillman, son of James Tillman. Matthew Tillman was a captain in the horse troops in 1741, served in the lower house of the Maryland legislature from 1751 to 1776, in the Maryland conventions during the Revolutionary War, and was a senator from 1776 to 1783. He also serves as a delegate to the Continental Congress and has been referred to as the father of the Revolution in Maryland. Richard Tillman, son of Richard Tillman, was born 11th of May, 1738, and married his cousin Elizabeth Tillman, daughter of Colonel Edward Tillman, and had a son Richard Edward Tillman. Peregrine Tillman, another son of Richard Tillman, was born 24th of January, 1741, and married his cousin Deborah Lloyd, daughter of Colonel Robert Lloyd, and Anna Maria Tillman. Peregrine and Deborah were the parents of Robert Lloyd, Anna Maria, who married cousin James Earl, Tench, William Hemsley, and Elizabeth, who married John Custis, a Sephardic, Wilson. Peregrine attended the Maryland Convention in 1775, was commissioned a colonel of the 4th Battalion in 1778, and was a state senator in 1787 to 1794. These relationships offer a classic case history of crypto-Jewish endogamy. The Tillmans immigrated to Maryland from London. Oswald Tillman was a grocer. His son Richard the immigrant, a physician. Both were occupations favored by Jews in England, crypto-Jews, of course, at this time. All right, we're not just talking about just specific, what you think of, when you hear Jews today, but crypto-Jews, of course. Crypto-Jews, of course, Sephardic, Moorish people. Richard's daughters were named Deborah and Rebecca Rebecca married Simon Wilmer, whose business dealings intersected with other proposed Jewish families in Maryland. One of the Richard's servants, as George Heath, bears a distinctively Sephardic Jewish surname. Richard's son, also Richard, married Lloyd, and the next generation married into the Frisbees, Robbins, and Goldsboro families. The family then embarked on a multi-generational escapade of endogamy that surpassed even the exhibited by the Boones and Bryants and the Chaffins and Hacketts, both of which are Sephardic Melungeon lineages. Among both Sephardim and Muslims, endogamy included first cousin and levirate marriages, was commonly practiced as ways of maintaining blood purity and familial secrecy if needed regarding religious practices. Not to belabor the subject, we list other Maryland names thought to be possibly Sephardic or Moorish in Appendix I. By way of conclusion, let us glance at one of those Adair, Hebrew name for a month, to illustrate a common path to extreme western frontier taken by settlers landed in Maryland. One of the authors termed this the Great Melungeon Migration. The reasons for this rush to the wilderness do not seem to be the same as those offered commonly by historians such as Alan Taylor, that is, the desire of the small freeholder to avoid taxation by moving gradually beyond the reach of the authorities. Instead, we see a pattern of landing, often illegally, and making a beeline for Kentucky and Tennessee, stronghold of the Melungeons, right? Tennessee, also Cherokee, where breakaway Carolinians had gone so far as to establish the semi-independent state of Watauga and later Franklin. All right, you hear that? Who was doing that? A lot of these Maryland people that we just read about. John Adair Sr. is said to have come to Baltimore with his family in 1760 from Ballymena country, Antrim, Ireland. The family heads straight for the westernmost English settlement in Augusta County, Virginia, later Boudetour, briefly called Fincastle, where the father joins the militia and signs a succession of petitions that today are viewed as signs of the pre-revolutionary revolt against England. As soon as the way is clear, we find him in the newly established Watauga settlement in East Tennessee and Boone settlement in Kentucky, Wayne County. He eventually builds Adair Station near Knoxville, which becomes a leverage point for removing the Cherokee Indians to their new lower towns in Georgia and Alabama, right? Who was doing that? John Jr. follows in the footsteps of his father, helping defend the frontier around the mouth of the North Fork of the Holston River and Samuel Brashear's company near present-day Kingsport. In 1789, the North Carolina legislature establishes a storehouse for provisions for the Cumberland Guard, poised to extend European settlements to Middle Tennessee. The storehouse is at the home of John Adair. The road is cut by William Cooper, Daniel Boone's former guide, an ancestor of both authors. John Adair III marries William Cooper's granddaughter of Cherokee Chief Black Fox, Sarah Cooper. The Adairs were among the first Wayne County families, which included Atkins, Burnett's, Barnes, Barriers, Bells, Burks, Blevins, Coopers, Denise, Davenports, Dobbs, Dolans, Ellams, Gregorys, Keatons, Cogers, Lovelaces, Parmsleys, Parkers, Phibbs, Rices, Ryans, Scotts, Sollys, Sanduskys, Smiths, Sharps, Vaughns, and Youngs. Many of these names we have already previewed as being Sephardic, all right? Most of these second generation intermarried with others of the same ilk, often their cousins, or else with Cherokee Indians. With who were these Sephardic Moorish people marrying? With their cousins, or who else? With Cherokee Indians, whom they saw as being also of the tribes of Israel. I didn't say it. It's not me making this up. They were saying it. They were saying it because they were encountering these people like, oh, wow, they are like the tribes of Israel. There was a rudimentary Jewish congregation gathered at one time around Isaac Cooper, about 1775, 1845, who had married the daughter of Black Fox. Marriage and presumably other religious services were held in his home on Beaver Creek. The names of the leaders of this congregation, which deserves to be called the first west of the Alleghenies, are commemorated in a number of courthouse documents in which the parties cite each other as character witnesses. John Adair Jr.'s Revolutionary War pension, for instance, names Isaac Cooper's Fleming Gregory, John Bell, Lewis Coffey, Martin Beatty, and William Hardin, all whom lived in the neighborhood and bear what we have learned to be Sephardic surnames. DNA analysis demonstrate that James Adair, the Indian trader and author who was probably a cousin of our John Adair, belongs to male lineage pedigree J2, a common Mediterranean and Jewish genetic type. To judge from a descendants test, it can be postulated that he came from Scottish Sephardic stock transplanted to Scotland and Ireland from the lands of the Mediterranean and was in the process, like many of his Jacobite contemporaries, all right, of getting back in touch with the family's Jewish past. His observations on Hebrewisms among the Cherokee and Chickasaw Indians in his book, History of the American Indians. Remember, we've read this book a lot, most of the chapters, everything he was encountering, all the correlations as to why he was saying these got to be the lost tribes, you know, all the stuff he was seeing them do, the way they lived, their culture, the ceremonies, all that. Make sure to catch those videos, all right, that we've done before. And they're saying are understandable. They result from ethnic recognition. From what? From ethnic recognition. They're the same people. A lot of these are the same people. What? You see, this is getting deep. This is what we're kind of going to move into, all right? A lot of you guys already know this stuff, you know. A lot of you guys know, say, you know, some of these people are just coming home, right? Another Maryland family that took approximately the same route to the frontier as the Adairs, although much earlier were the Gist or Gist. The first of the Gist came to Maryland in the 1680s at the time of the Glorious Revolution in England. Christopher Richard Gist was married to Edith Cromwell, a relative of Oliver Cromwell, the Protector. One of his children was Richard Gist, born in Baltimore. Lest the name Christopher seem an odd one for a Jew, let us point out that it was frequently given to the son of a crypto-Jewish family as the perfect dodge or cover. Christopher married Zipporah, Moray, Sephardic name. Later, Gist married Howard's sister, a Kennedy, Canada, Pandia, a Gracia, of the powerful and wealthy Pennsylvania Trading Company and other Gist. Even the family of Sequoyah, the half-breed son of Nathaniel Gist, all right, Sequoyah was what? Half-breed. Sequoyah, a son of a Gist, as a Sephardic. Sequoyah's dad was a Sephardic Jew, person of color, European, okay? Sequoyah's half-breed son of Nathaniel Gist, who is credited with inventing a Cherokee writing system, is heavily intermarried with cousins, namely the Loonies, Luna, a Sephardic banking family, which entered the colonies through the Philadelphia via the Isle of Man. This island in the Irish Sea of Scotland was at the time a center of piratical activities and irregular commerce, a heritage that persists today, as it is in name at least, a separate and sovereign country. Robert Looney joined Alexander Ross, Morgan Bryan, and 70 other families, including also James and Edward Davis, in a cavalcade down the Valley Road onto the remote western frontier of Virginia in 1734. All right. Then it says here the Gist genealogies. All right. So again, we're not going to just go over all of them. Just go ahead and pause this, take a screenshot. This is the Gist. Some of their, you know, and of course, a lot of their involved with the Cherokees, as you guys heard. All right. Or was it the Cherokees or other tribes? They're just calling Cherokees, especially if they were in the East Coast of America. All right. So again, take a screenshot if you see this. So it says here, concluding comments. The philosopher Alfred North Whitehead once remarked that without a purpose, human history was a barren exchange of names, In the case of Maryland, we have gone beneath the surface of the names to document marriage patterns, business partnerships, inheritance provisions, and other family matters. More than in any other colony, Greek, Ottoman, and Turkish roots are exposed once we rub off the English, Dutch, or Huguenot veneer. All right? What he's saying, when you really actually do the history and the research, the genealogical history of these families, their background, we see more Greek, Ottoman, and Turkish roots than those tags they put on them, right? English, Dutch, or Huguenot. All right, Moorish people is what we see. At the base of it all, we encounter Spanish, Portuguese, Hebrew, Arabic, and Berber. Just those elements that imbued the Sephardic world that came to an abrupt end in 1492 and during the Inquisition when these people got expelled from Spain and Portugal. Okay? This is what we're seeing in Maryland. We have seen an ingrained pattern of cousin marriage, one that starts even before arrival in the New World, and one that is no respecter of nationalities. Business arrangements were often cemented by these intermarriages with the effect of keeping money and credit within an extended family. All right, keep it in the family. Finally, we have drawn back the curtain of Quakerism. All right, the curtain of Quakerism. You guys understand what we've done? We've drawn back that curtain, that tag, that Quakerism, all right, to reveal the true motives that dictated where the family settled and where the family moved on to. None of these traits we suggest was random or accidental. It was all organized. These were the people colonizing Maryland and most of the colonies as we now know, okay? So that's the end of chapter 7. We're going to go into chapter 8 next. Oh, Huguenot, South Carolina. Oh, yeah, we're going to have fun with that one. Even though we've done a video about the Huguenots, we're going to read that complete chapter, you know, little by little. Again, we're going to get it like it's the first time and recap a lot of that good information coming out of South Carolina. But I hope you guys enjoyed this video. All right, again, this was chapter 7 of the book, Jews and Muslims in British Colonial America, a genealogical history.
I'm overheated, can hardly sleep at night, doing crazy dreaming. You're the reason why. Hiding by the baby, losing my mind. Don't try to save me. I feel alive. My world is faster and faster. The tears and the laughter. I'm here for the ride.
place. That part really burns me. Because we've all been raised to think that the white man did this to us. And in fact, it was Swarties. And I'm still trying to figure out, we got to come to that point where they explain to us, how did all of this happen by black people get turned around and get accused to have been white people that did it? Because I've looked at some other levels of this, and it says that that the white indentured servants matched up with the black landowners and became the fronts for those black landowners. And now I'm thinking, Illuminati right about now. I'm thinking Illuminati, crypto Christians, crypto Jews, Sephardics, secret society. Y'all just keep messing with me. We're gonna find out. We're gonna find out all that stuff. Okay. Let me get this next round of videos, because that one went by pretty damn quick, man. And I still got a taste for the truth. I still got a big taste for the truth. So let's go find out what the cryptos had to do next. And I appreciate y'all, and thank y'all for staying and sticking and watching this with me. And I'll be back down over in the chat to see what else y'all have to say here in a minute, as soon as I get this going, okay? That's tomorrow. So in order for me to get to 7:49 tomorrow, I got to go 12 hours here, get to 1
a.m. plus 6. We're getting to 7 a.m. plus 49. We're getting to 7:49 a.m. and 2:23.
Getting
So
lots of eye contact. I
you
feel like this is going well.
are
Just wish I knew what she
18
was thinking.
hours and 49 minutes.
All day, yeah.
Rule number 3, you can't get rich slow. When I owned 100 houses, I made about 10.
Yeah, wow. Hey, guess what I was doing, guys? Talking while I was muted. Like always, thanks to everybody that's tuned in right now. Much love and respect to everybody in the chat who's live there, here building with the community. Thanks for being here once again. And yeah, working on so many different videos, man. It's so hard to keep up. But wanted to finish reading this book because I think it'll help us with future topics. Things I'm going to be talking about. A lot of this book again. And let me just go back so you guys can see what I'm talking about. So I'm talking about this book right here, Jews and Muslims in British Colonial America. All right, we've gone over a little bit, a couple videos, the Huguenot video, you know, the Black Dutch videos. And so I want to continue today with chapter 2. And in between there, we're going to surf the wave in real time. You know, we're going to dissect the information while we're reading and look for things just in case, just to correlate. So I hope you guys are not in a hurry. it's early enough. I usually do this really late, you know, try to let everybody do their thing in the daytime and go live and do their things. But I want to go live today a little earlier. Hopefully, get a different crowd and get people to come and build with us, learn, and let's keep reading this book. All right. And again, I just sometimes I like to procrastinate a little in the beginning because I know YouTube doesn't give the proper notifications. Everybody tells me. All right. So, again, just giving some time, everybody arrive. We're about to get started. Again, thanks for being here. Pura vida. Wow. Wow. Hey, one thing I do want to say is shout out to all the producers who have sent me videos throughout the years, and got a nice little collection here of beats. So I want to give shout out to Antonio Jackson, Maniacs Beats, Alman Deliman, Joseph Levels, of course, Jalen or Vizo Breeze, Vazo Breeze. Thank you for all the beats. And there's probably some more producers out there. At me, I haven't used much of it, but like some of these get buried in my email and I forget where they were. But if you send me a beat, thank you for that. All the music producers, we love the music. I love music. I really love the music while I'm reading, and usually just jamming to it, right? So yeah, so shout out to all the producers out there. Pura vida to the people out there listening. My people out there. Consider all you guys family. Much love and respect. I got love for everybody. Unless you come with disrespect, hate, then I'm gonna have to defend myself, because I'm here to, like Kimani Marley said, I'm here to keep the peace, but I'm prepared for war. Rakan's gonna play. Priest King's gonna play. Ahau. I don't have that name for no reason. Ahau. Shout out to Basil Breeze. So yeah, we're gonna get started right now. Let me just go ahead and share my screen. Once again, thanks for being here.
Thank you for watching the Y2K Show.
All right, all right. So once again, shout out to the whole family out there. Tuning in. We're gonna continue again. We're gonna talk about a lot of things. I don't know how long we're gonna be here today. It's early, So we want to read this again. We're reading from the book, A Genealogical History: Jews and Muslims in British Colonial America. Elizabeth Hirschman and Donald Yates is the authors. Right? And we're going to chapter 2, Sephardim in the New World. Now, this chapter it is going to try to explain who the Sephardic Jews are, and their hypotheses and ideas and different correlations they're getting from different people. All right, and so we're going to pull out the babies. They have a lot of correlation, a lot of truth to what they're saying. Maybe they might not understand everything fully because they're still thinking in white and black crayon colored terms, and that certain people are all white or certain people are all black or certain people came from Africa and certain people came from Europe. So We got to dodge the hijack always with that, right? But at least we got some good genealogical history, things we can research and correlate. All right. Gonna get started ready here. All right, so we're just gonna start reading right here. It says chapter 2. What were the origins of Sephardic Jews? Where and where did they form into a coherent community? Whereas Portuguese Jews in 16th century England and the Netherlands expressed it a nation. So when did they become a nation? So remember, they were heavily deep in going into England, Netherlands, which became New Jerusalem. A lot of the Dutch were actually Moors, Sephardic Jews. A lot of the English people were actually Moors, Sephardic Jews. A lot of the Irish, a lot of the French, so on and so on. We've got the whole history before. We know the history about the Huguenots. We know the general consensus at the time. Sephardic Jews, the Moriscos, the Moors of Portugal and Spain were people of color, so-called black people, swart, black. All right, Negro. Yes. All right, so we're going to cover that a little bit again. What were the origins of Sephardi? They're asking. Most historians believe that a small contingent of Hebrews from ancient Judea made their way to the Iberian Peninsula by the time of the rise of Rome. So they're saying maybe some Jews from Judea, right? Meaning possible Israelites. I don't know, but they're just saying Hebrews. Hebrews can mean a lot of things. All right, remember the etymology of Hebrew. I'll go over it. Says others propose a nucleus of Sepharad may have come into being there much earlier, around the time of the building of the Second Temple in the 6th century BC. All right. Jews were often fellow travelers, were Phoenicians. All right, who's the Phoenicians? So-called Phoenicians, who occupied parts of Spain in the mid-8th century BC. All right, Phoenicians, we're going to have a future video trying to break down the nations of these people who Phoenicians were. Again, we're trying to go here little by little, try to understand everything, get very specific with specific nations, specific people, so we don't generalize. Because I'm sorry, that a lot of the Phoenicians were being, people called Phoenicians were being grouped. There were different peoples. A lot of the Phoenicians that were Danites, or the Danes, the Danites, the Tuati Danan, the Danites, who were Israelites too, supposedly, right? So we got that. We got a lot of different things that are being called Phoenicians, So that's one of the theories, that a lot of these Jews from Judea, meaning the Holy Land or wherever that was, right? We know the old world, might have come to Iberia. So that's one possibility, and I agree with that. That is one of the, I would say, mixes that they have, the Sephardic Jews. All right. Certainly Spanish Jewry was well established by Roman times, when Jews constituted a quarter of the population in the East Mediterranean and a tenth in the empire as a whole. These figures mirror the frequencies of male genetic lineage, a predictor of the distribution of Jews. Judaic scholar Paul Wexler, however, maintains that the majority of Sephardic Jews was a North African Berber origin. Majority of Sephardic Jews were what? North African Berbers origin, and converted to Judaism. They converted to what? Judaism. Sometimes before 711 CE, Arab invasion of the Iberian Peninsula. Before that, they had converted already to Judaism, they're saying. The word Sephardi itself is as a fourth African Gothic sword, or black, dark, black. Sephardi means black, sword, dark, Sephardi. An etymology with roots in 5th century. In the 5th century, Vandal and Visigoth invasions. All right, so just want to go over something real quick. They're going to be talking a lot about blood types here and stuff. So if you guys into the blood types and all, and study, will be able to relate what they're saying. Just want to remind everybody, the video I did is part 3, Nations of the World. Sephardi, Sepharda, Sardis. All right. This video right here. We went over a lot of good info where ancient Sepharda might have actually been, not in Iberia, but in some of these Sephardic people might have originated from as well, not just Jews from Judea or Berbers from North Africa, but also they got a Turkish element, They got the Gaulish Celtic element, got the Sumerian Sim element, Danish. You know, that's where the Danish come into through that area. So honestly, Sephardic looked like a lot of mixture, and a lot of it was conversion as well into Judaism. These were Muslims. A lot of them were Muslims or Turkish people who converted to Judaism. All right, we're gonna go back to the book. You know, that's kind of what they were trying to say there in one of their theories. Now it says an alternative or supplementary theory is that a large number of Sephardic Jews came into existence with a conversion event in southern France. Southern France, all right, plays a big role. Southern France, we're going to keep reading about these areas, different areas of these countries, because we got to stop grouping people by country. Like, for example, we can't think of all the French as being the same people, meaning some French from south of France, some from North France, you know, they're different people. They lived separately. They had different genealogies and histories. They weren't just the same people. They were living in France, the territory called France, right? Kingdom of France, or whatever you want to call that. And when they got to America, they were considered French. But a lot of these people weren't even the same people. So that's why you will see wars between French and French, or Portuguese against Portuguese, Sephardic Jews versus Spanish, right? They are Spanish too. Sephardic Jews are Spanish. So why are they beefing with the Spain, the crown? Because they're beef. So again, it's not about, these are peoples. These people have specific genealogy and history. All right, so you want to emphasize that a lot. Again, there was a major supposed conversion here of in southern France around 750, 900 AD. It says here, a proselytizing movement is believed to have been centered on the establishment of a prominent Talmudic academy in Narbonne. A lot of drop in this Narbonne monastery. Right, I was looking into it while I was reading this, supporting the conversion of Frankish, Burgundian, and Languedoc populations to Judaism is the research of Jane Gerber, showing that many Sephardic Jews believe themselves to be descendants of King David of Israel. All right, so you see Frankish people, Burgundian, Languedoc, this area, Languedoc, a lot of Moors, a lot of this for many years, Moorish territory. All right, so we can't think about these people just being white just because they're saying Frankish or Burgundian, or you know, just because they're in Europe. So again, these people, and I would agree that some of these people may be descendants of a Davidic line. That's why they were princes and called Nazis and had, you know, different titles when they were under the Moorish rule. Because we're going to read on today, Sephardic Jews didn't all have the same status. Some of them were royal nobles, some of them were servants and slaves and being sent to America as slaves. All right. This belief evidently was fostered by Davidic descended Babylonian Jews who founded the Narbonne Academy. Chief among them was Machir and his children and grandchildren, who intermarried with the Carolingian and Aquitanian nobility. Carolinian, Aquitanian, talking about Basque people, indigenous people of France and Spain, Carolingian and Aquitanian people. I'm digging on that, future videos, who they might be. All right. But Markir, all right, as a prominent history here that we've gone over, and Drop Nation, shout out to King Drop, Con Drop, many years of this correlation, this very eye-opening information that he's been reading to us over the last couple of years. I'm going to explain what. It says here, it was the master of Narbonne Yeshiva, Exilard, and Exilard Makir ben Abidai, also known as Theodoric, Count of Septimania. All right, Septimania, the Count of Septimania. We know a lot of the maps of America have Septimania all over the top, all over, mostly in Canada and in some parts of like the, you know, the Midwest, Utah area, Septimania. All right, Theodoric. Theodoric has been mentioned by Condrop in Septimania. We're going to get that drop real quick. But they're talking about some of these Sephardic Jews may actually descend or have some ties with this person and his families that supposedly went over there and you know, help establish this Talmudic academy in Narbonne. All right, so it says variously referred to by contemporaries as King of the Jews and Prince of Narbonne, reputedly of Davidic descent himself, who introduced the tradition when he arrived from Babylon in 771. He arrived from Babylon. Where was Babylon? Thus, when these Romano-Frankish, and Visigothic, and other local countrymen converted to Judaism, they saw themselves as adoptive heirs of the house of David. Now, hey, we're the descendants now. We converted, we got adopted. So you see what's going on? A lot of people in this title, Sephardic Jew, ish. You gotta understand why they call him Jew, ish, ish, little bit Hebrew, yeah, a little bit, yeah, you know, a little bit of this, a little bit of that, Frankish, you ish, greenish, I'm bluish. Get it? All right, so in a few generations, the mythic lineage was remembered as hereditary claim founded on blood and genealogy. All right, it was passed forward as true. All right, it was passed forward as true. So real quick, just gonna go to this book again. Shout out to Drop Nation Fair Use. Hey, don't give us no copyright strike. This author's been known to do that. Been hating. Hey, Daniel, man, we love you, man. Don't give me no right. All right, Daniel Lowe. So this is a book, Forbidden History of the Americas. All right, just real quick, we're gonna go to part of this book. Correlates with what we're just reading. As soon as it stops, there we go.
Cox has the fastest internet download speeds in Las Vegas. The question is,
Now, what it's talking about, and again, if you guys don't know, one of my very first videos, I read about the Tucson crosses, the artifacts from Tucson, Arizona, which were basically, you know, these metal swords, crosses they kind of supposedly found, the Roman Jewish colonies, and the lead crosses of Tucson. All right, so this is in this chapter of the book. Again, major drop, go get that on Drop Nation. He's gone over this book up and down, up and down. All right, what is this, man? They say found this in Arizona, man. That's what they're saying. They found these in Arizona. And it says here, some of the writings on the cross arm of the left is profile of a head with the swords Britain, Albion, and Jacob. In the center is another head profile with the words Romans, Actim, Theodore. On the right is another head profile with the words Gaul, seeing Israel. On the vertical beam in one of these lead crosses is the inscription, Councils of Great Cities, together with 700 soldiers. We are born over the sea to Kalelos, an unknown land. I Kalelos. Kalelos means the promised land. Kalelos was over here in America. We got maps showing Kalelos, old maps with Kalelos all over the place. All right, you guys got the drop. An unknown land where Texas, Sylvanus, Sylvanus ruled far and wide over a people. Theodore transferred his troops to the foot of the city Rhoda, and more than 700 were captured. No gold is taken away. Theodore, a man of great courage, rules for 14 years. Jacob rules for 6. With the help of God, nothing has to be feared in the name of Israel. All right, so again, that was just some of the inscriptions there they're talking about. This is another one here. Now, it says here in an article I found, speaking of this, I titled A Jewish Catholic State in America. It tells some very interesting things that in my understanding bring many things into perspective concerning the many rumors of early voyages to this land. In the article, it tells of Kalelos, meaning promised land, in one sense, and or Calix, which is the land of America. Calix, Kalelos, California, Calix, promised land. Shout out to Drop Nation, who was Pastor John. And tells of Septimania, which is Lower France, which exists in about 700 AD. It says, the Kalelos records speak of Theodorus, of the leader of many people who leave the Roman lands. He left what? The Roman lands. Where was that? For Kalelos in 77 AD. All right, he was going to the promised land. But guess what? He was already there. He was coming already from Kalelos. He was actually going back. Again, they sent out, we just read, they went and got Theodore, right? To establish a Talmudic order in Lower France, in Septimania. But he was actually coming from Kalelos, the Holy Land. And he went back. Theodore is none other than the Jewish king of Septimania, a Roman Jewish state in southern France. He is the son of the first Jewish king of Septimania, also called Theodoric, Thierry, I am Mary, Thierry, the Narboni, Makir Todros, the Dros family, Andrus, the Dros, Dorus, Dietrich, Theodoric, Ameri, Elchitiv, Nehemiah, Namon, Amen ben Almer. Now, these are all different names. It's also known as Theodoric, king of Saxony, and of Namus, duke of Bavaria. He and his brothers were great warrior Davidic princes of the time of Charlemagne. On the death of his father, Makir Theodoric, in about 765 AD, Nehemiah Theodoric becomes the Western Exilarch, the leader of the Jews. All right, so if you don't know, an Exilarch was in the biblical history, the royal lines of the Jews who were actually in exile in Babylon. They were called Exilarchs, but they were allowed to live and practice and do their things, you know, under the Babylonian rule, Exilarchs. All right, so again, I just wanted to go into that. This is a future video. We're gonna try to break this down more deeply. I don't just like reading things. I want to be able to show a lot of correlation. And I never knew that reading Jews and Muslims in British colonial America, they were gonna actually mention this information that I've gone over, thankfully, in Drop Nation, man. So I had this already in the background. So I'm like, Theodoric, I know who Theodoric is. All right, Theodoric. So they were just saying. Let's see if we can get that again. It was the master of Narboni Jesha Exilar Makir ben Habili, also known as Theodoric, Count Septimania, variously referred to by contemporaries as King of the Jews, Prince of Narboni, repudiated of Davidic descent, who introduced the tradition when he arrived. All right, when he arrived. So if you go actually into more deeply into this person, Makir, which I did while I was trying to get prepared, you'll see he was actually coming from the Promised Land before he established this academy in France. Where is the Promised Land? So what I'm trying to show here is, yeah, maybe there was possible. We already know this. Trade, connections, commerce, how do you say this? Integration with different peoples from America and Europe, way before Columbus, going back and forth. A lot of these were probably families. They probably had royal colonies over there in Europe. They were going over there, assigning people over there, and things were happening. We can't just think that it was, oh, these people were coming over here, and these are like, oh, the Vikings came. Maybe they were from here originally. Who are the Vikings? Are we talking about Danes? Are we just talking about the Black Danes? Because that's what they're saying. The Vikings are the Black Danes. Who's the Danes? Who's the Danes? And if the Danes are Danites, where's the Danites from? Supposedly supposed to be Israelites from the Promised Land. Palelus. So are we seeing things in reverse when they're saying they came here first, or they're just coming back, or just a normal trade going on back and forth? Something to just think about. I'm just saying we're going to continue with the video, with the book. Still got a lot of drop. So that was some of the theories they're letting you know. All right, we're going to continue. It says in the 19th century, Davis was the second best known Jewish name in England, born by 1 in 32 of donors to Jewish charitable causes, according to Joseph Jacobs, tally for the Jewish Encyclopedia. In all sense, all Jews are converts. Contemporary Jewish studies generally acknowledge that the monotheistic endogamous Hebrews, listen to this, because they're kind of giving a drop. They're dropping some hijack at the same time giving some drop, because they're kind of right, but we understand it's not about a religion, right? It's a lineage more. It's not about a religion. So if you are converting into becoming Hebrew or to become Jew, you're not really Hebrew, because Hebrew is not a religion. Hebrew is not even a etymological word. It means runs from the other side. It's not like a nation. They were just labeled Hebrews, those from the other side, those who migrate, those from who are beyond the Euphrates, those who dwell beyond the Euphrates, those who crossed over, All right, so now listen what it says. It says, in all sense, all Jews are converts. Contemporary Jewish studies generally acknowledge that the monotheistic endogamous Hebrews portrayed in the Bible are largely mythic constructions used to create cosmological coherence and a naturalistic concept of identity across a very diverse landscape of tribes and ethnic groups in the ancient Middle East. And again, when it comes to all these converts, when we talk about Khazars converting to Judaism, when we talk about Jewish, when we talk about Israelis and all these people, we're talking about, that's what we're talking about here. They're right. It's a very diverse landscape of tribes and ethnic groups coming together, being called so-called Jewish. It was the rule rather than exception among various settlements of early Jews to backslide into the worship of local pagan cults and deities, especially Ashtoreth, consort of the powerful Canaanite god Baal. Even at the time of the Roman dispersal from Judea, Jews comprised various classes: royal, aristocratic, and common. All right, so this is what I was saying earlier, that these Sephardic Jews in Spain and all these areas, some of them were royal, some of them were aristocratic, some of them were just common people, servants, so-called slaves too, and exhibited wavering degrees of commitment to monotheism and Mosaic law. Furthermore, many had become Hellenized, taken on Greek names, speaking, reading, and writing in Koine Greek rather than Hebrew, even adopting Greek customs such as social bathing. All right, so Greeks custom Hellenized. All right, again, if I'll sort of slow down. That's a deep word right there. They became what? Hellenized. You guys got to go back to my Thoth videos, to my ancient my Pan-African video I did the other time about Egyptology, how it comes from a Hellenized background, Hellenistic Hermetics, Freemasonry, Hellenized Greek Hermetics, which goes back into Thoth, which goes back into Freemasonry. This is alchemy. All right, Hellenized teachings. So these so-called Jews are doing all this stuff too, right? So how much Hebrew really are they? Talking about Hebrew from the people supposedly were Hebrew in the Bible. What is the relation, these Sephardic Jews and the people, what is it? Like trying to break all this down. It's very complex. It's not just one thing. I'm trying to show you guys. All right. So yeah, eventually they're known as Sephardic Jews, right? But it makes up a lot. There's a lot to make up a Sephardic Jew. Peace and love to the chat. Thanks for tuning in. Now we're going to continue in the book. It says, not even the most zealous modern day genealogical efforts have been able to establish a direct, unbroken link to the earliest Israelite or Palestinian rabbis. So they haven't, because he's right. None of these people, they don't descend from the actual people they speaking of. So of course they're not going to genealogically. We got the video right in part one of My Nations of the World. The guy who was Ish, right? He's a Ish, Ashkenaz, he's a Khazar descendant. He said, and my dad's, founding father, we're from the Ukraine. We are not the same people from, 5,000 years ago. We come from Ukraine, you know, we're not those people. That's the son of a founding father of Israel. So, much love and respect to any country, any people. We're just talking truth here. Fair use. Don't take us down. Don't take us down just because we're talking about you. Don't take us down. Truth is going to come out anyways. All right. So that's just a disclaimer right there. All right. So thus, instead of using a norm of authenticity built around a core of founding fathers and mothers, one is perhaps better advised to approach Judaism as an even change in multi-ethnic religion, because we don't deal with religion, all right? So this is not the same religion surviving the cataclysms of history by constantly reinventing and reconstructing itself. If historical Jews have gone through occasional bottlenecks and periodic disintegration, they have also experienced periods of triumphal expansion and efflorescence. In these periods of upswing, conversion to Judaism rather than persecution and apostasy was the rule. Conversion was the rule. The Roman world was one such golden age, and early medieval Spain and southern France another. All right, so again, let's not forget when we talk about Romans, we know, I don't got to Google Black Romans, right, or Black Etruscans. If you've missed my Swarty Europe videos, I did it. I showed many Black Romans, Black Etruscan potteries, archaeology, the paintings on the wall. So again, we're not just because we're talking about Romans, Sephardic Jews, French, Frankish. The Franks were people of color too. So dash the hijack with all that white stuff. Break the spell. Break the spell. You can do it. All right. So again, yes, the Sephardic Jews, Portuguese Jews, Moriscos, the Muslim Moors from Iberia, Spain, Portugal, southern France, all these people were in general considered very dark, very swarthy. Let's not forget that. Sephardic genetic heritage, Paul Wexler, the new non-Jewish origins of the Sephardic Jews, the non-Jewish origins. Again, we read this in my video that I did on the Sephardi part 2, or actually part 3 of the Nations of the World. Make sure to go get that. All right. A lot of them are just converts and Turkish people and Berbers and all that, all right? Makes a persuasive case that today's Sephardic Jews originated primarily in proselytes from North Africa or Berber ethnicity who merged with later converts in Iberia, all right? A lot of these people, they're being labeled African because they're dark skinned. A lot of them weren't even African. We would append in south of France, right? So again, south of France, that's not Africa. But again, they label them, a lot of them North Africans supposedly, because they're like, where did they must have got the color from there? They must have mixed in with Berbers, but no, they are the Berbers. The Berbers in Lower France, the Berbers in Northern France, they didn't have no distinction. It was all Iberia. You guys gotta understand that it was all Iberia. It wasn't separated by North Africa and Southern France and Spain. It was all Iberia. That was Iberia, right? How many years were the Moors in control? They'll let you know. I Yes, they're colored people. Yes, but that doesn't mean they were majority African descendants. They're letting you know straight up, even the DNA proves that these Sephardic Jews were Europeans, not African, European background, European background. They didn't originate in Africa. Actually, minor role. The North African converts played a minor role in Sephardic ancestry. Most of them were European already, European, people of color, European. These include DNA samples collected in the Canary Islands, the Azores, Cuba, Puerto Rico, Mexico, New Mexico. All recognized sites of Sephardic anuism, forced ones, all right, forced ones being converted. They had to be forced to convert to Catholicism, or crypto Jews, crypto conversos, crypto Jews, crypto secret Jews. Sephardi Jews, these are people of color we're talking about. Since all these studies include surnames, they open up important insights concerning the names of known Sephardim in the post-Inquisition diaspora. Sephardic surnames are concentrated in the first colonies that Spain and Portugal planted in the Canary Islands, Azores, Madeira, Cuba, Hispaniola, and the others. Let us address them one by one. All right, so just want to repeat what they said there, and we know what they're talking about. Like, if you guys been following me and you guys been paying attention, not just following, but kind of catches a lot of info. I know to retain, but remember who was setting up the sugar plantations with slaves? Who was doing that? Who had the money to invest and do that? First of all, who had the skill? Who became very skillful and known to do that, and were being recommended and hired to do this? Yeah, it was Sephardic, Moors, Muslims who were the ones in the sugar plantations. They began in North Africa. Later, they went to the Madeira Island, Canary Islands, and Azores. That's where they started the first sugar plantation. Then they moved over to the Caribbean, and you guess what? A lot of them were also the slave labor in these islands. I'm going to tell you straight up right now. It was Sephardic Jewish Moors that were being expelled from Spain and Portugal, and American Indians. American Indians, we got this already. Let's go back 3 years from now. We got who the Spanish and Portuguese really enslaving when they were in the Americas. They weren't bringing no Africans over there. They weren't coming from Africa. They were coming from Lisbon and Seville. So if anything, they were bringing Sephardic black Latinos. We're gonna see that. We're gonna get into that. Other than that, it was a lot of American Indians ending up in the Canary Islands, Azores, Madeira. We got that. Africans and Native Americans, right? Jack Forbes, the book with all the all the sources. All right, so let's remember all this. Let's put all this together. We're just putting all the dots together here. Right. So before I continue, just wanted to go. Let's see. The window I had open. Okay.
If you'd like to know how an affiliate marketer can go from only small, irregular payments like $102 or $69.
Black Latinos. Just want to read a couple things here, right? Because we're gonna get into who were the Latinos. A lot of people talk about the Latinos, right? Been talking about it for years and this and that. But the Latinos were basically Ladino was a language. A lot of the people who spoke Ladino were the Sephardic Jews and Muslim Moors from Spain and Portugal. They spoke Ladino. The Ladino Moors, it says here, the Jews of Cape Verde, the Guinea Rivers, and the Gulf of Biafra. Remember, they were where are they sending these people? These are the so-called Negroes they were sending to Cape Verde. We already know it was Indians too. We know it was Indians. Now we're gonna get into who was also being sent there. It was a lot of these unwanted Europeans, unwanted, undesirable cryptos. A lot of those they were sent to Cape Verde and all these islands, the Madeiras, and all that. All right, we're just gonna get a little bit of this drop. This website's been up for years. They got a lot of good drop. You know, we pull out the babies. We pull out it's a little Pan Africanish. It's a little Pan Africanish, but it's all good. We got good stuff in here. So the decline of the Moors, right? The decline of the Moors of the Iberian Peninsula suffered great pathological jealousy of the Moors. It was their simple wish to dispossess the Moorish owners of the land, confiscate all their properties, and enslave their bodies. All right. So Moorish, they call Sephardic Jews Moorish, right? Too. Now I just want to emphasize something. He was careful not to say white. He did say European armies, but I think he wants us to assume these were white people, getting rid of the dark ones. But as Asir the Duke kind of always reminds us, I watch his videos too sometimes. You know, the Spanish that were kicking out the Moors, they were so-called Negro too. All right, they were so-called black people too. All right, he'll let you know. All right, Moors who really study this stuff actually really know it wasn't a black and white thing. This is a more and more war, more about culture and religion and different backgrounds, ethnic backgrounds and beliefs. What's going on other than complexion? All right. So hopefully everybody in the chat is having a good time learning, building. I'm not even reading the chat, so if there's a lot of opinions going around, remember opinions are opinions. You can say a lot in the chat, but you got to start showing sources and stuff. We correlate. We've been here 4 or 5 years correlating all the information. All right. We correlate many different sources. All right. The Spanish were black. Who? What Spanish? Yeah, what's the Spanish? That's what we're trying to break down in this video. I hope you guys are paying attention right now. I'm trying to break that down to you guys. We already know. We already know these people. A lot of these people were color. All right. It was easy and simple for them. All right. So it says the Moors occupied the landmass where Lisbon is currently situated. All right. So Lisbon, Portugal, that was all Moorish. And they called it Alishbuna. They had ruled from 400 to 700 AD. All right. So we got the history, right? Following the complete conquest of Portugal in 1249, with the capture of Algarve, the Crusaders gradually tightened the nose around the Moors' neck. Literally speaking, discrimination got worse. Ordinary folks were constantly harassed. Moors were under unrelenting suspicion of disloyalty, insurrection, and rebellion. All right. So we want to get to the part that correlates with what we're learning here. It says Ladino. Look at this. Means Latinized Negroes. All right. What's a Ladino? A Latinized Negro, so-called Negro, Latinized Negro. All right. It was a racist term used for the Black Jews of Iberia. The Black Jews of Iberia. Who's the Ladinos? Who were soon deported to African islands and coastal settlements and America, right? And used as the first slaves in the sugar plantations. Who? Black Latinos. Black Latinos, who we know DNA wise are more European than African. Black Latinos are more European than African. Black Latinos were the first slaves in the sugar plantations. All right, I want you guys to understand that. According to Richard Loban in this article, Jews in Cape Verde and on the Guinea coast, paper presented at the University of Massachusetts, Portuguese or Iberian Jews sometimes use this term to note this social group which constituted a portion of early migrants to the Cape Verde Islands. Some reference use this term for the people and language of 16th and 17th century Sephardic Jews from Iberian Peninsula. The term Ladino could also refer to baptized African slaves. Could also, no, because a lot of those people were black, so they're trying to label them African. Because all the Latinos were really, majority were all so-called black. So, of course, there's theories that they might have been baptized. That's what he said, could also. But we know the facts. We know straight up it was actually referred to Latinos from Europe, not Africans. In either case, the reference was often racist and derogatory and implied a line wandering, sneaky, and thieving group which was particularly untrustworthy. All right. So, yeah, it goes on. Got another page here. Ladino, encyclopedia.com. Ladino or Judeo Spanish. The spoken and written Hispanic language of Jews of Spanish origin. The Jews of Spanish origin. Ladino, nothing to do with African. Judeo Spanish or Judeo Spanish, also known as Ladino. Also known as Ladino, is a Romance language derived from Old Spanish, originally spoken in Spain, then and after the Edict of Expulsion, spreading through the Ottoman Empire, Balkans, Turkey, West Asia, North Africa, as well as France, Italy, Netherlands, Morocco, and England. It is today spoken mainly by Sephardic minorities. Ladino, who's the Sephardic Jews? Black Latinos. Oh, Black Latinos. Gosh, the hijack. Most of them were so-called black. It's more correct to say, oh, a white Ladino, because they were more rare. So it was more proper to label somebody a white Ladino than a black Ladino, because Latinos were literally so-called Negro people. It says here, black Latinos were Hispanicized black Latinos, exiled to Spanish America. Exiled where? Spanish America. Who they sent? Who's these Negroes they were replacing the Indians with? you thought it was Africans, right? So again, some of those were Indians from South America they were replacing with. Some of them were Indians from North America, from other parts of the Caribbean. But a lot of them were what? Black Latinos, basically Europeans, black Europeans. All right. Not in I can't get any more clearer than that. I want you guys, I'm gonna use the tags so you guys can understand. It says in Spain they were referred to as negros latinos, cultivated or Latinized blacks, as opposed to negros bozales or bozo blacks, those captured in Africa. All right, they told you straight up, they're not coming from Africa. They're different than those. These Negroes were from Europe. All right, like Latinos born in the Americas were Negroes, Criollos or Creole blacks, Creoles, Creole people of Louisiana, Creole blacks. Who's the Sephardic Jews? Who's these Huguenots? Who's these French? Yes, it's getting deep, man. I know. Talking about real history, real genealogy. Prior to the arrival of Columbus to the Americas, there were black people who either lived as free men or were brought through the Arab slave trade, all right? Or either, so they don't know, right? So how many were free and how many were brought? It's all conjecture if you don't know. If you can't cite me a source, it's all conjecture. Because we know, we just read in the other book, right? That the DNA are saying they're mostly European, mostly European. After some time in Spanish society, those Africans, so-called Dashta hijack, no, they're just saying they're Africans, they're black, became Christianized and learned Spanish. No, they were Spanish. Dashta hijack, we read in Wikipedia with no sources, right? That part didn't have a source. There's no footnote. There were 50,000 black Latinos in Spain in the 15th century. All right, this has a source. And I bet you that source doesn't say they came from Africa. It's in Spanish. Although black Latinos came from many parts of the African continent, that's the hijack. All right, so they're adding their hijack. Again, there's no quote for that. There's no footnote for that part. You gotta pay attention to all this stuff. All right, they're making it up because they're so-called black. They have to say, well, they gotta have been coming from Africa at some point. Curimeo. All right. Initial stages of the Spanish colonization of the Americas showed that Amerindians were not suitable. Well, not suitable. Why? Because they didn't want to be so-called slaves to you guys. Yeah, for the labor that the conquerors required, mainly due to the Eurasian illnesses unknown in the Americas. Says Nicolas de Ovando decided to bring slaves from Spain. Oh, look how it's flipped and changed all of a sudden. Wait a minute. You've been telling us all our lives, guys. Pay attention. You've been telling us all our lives, Mr. Teacher, Professor, that they were replacing the Amerindians with so-called black Africans. Now you're telling me that Nicolas de Ovando decided to bring slaves from Spain. Slaves from Spain. And we got sources for that. Blackness in Latin America and the Caribbean, Volume 2. Blackness in Latin America and the Caribbean, Eastern South America, edited by Norman E. Witten, Arlene Torres. Man, there's so much drop. Upon the arrival of the Spanish conquerors, people of African descent contributed to the development of Puerto Rican society and culture. They mean people of dark complexion. That's all they're talking about when they put in that African word. So that's the hijack. They're not even talking about nationality or anything. They're talking about crayon colors here. That's a tag. However, the importation of people of dark complexion throughout the initial stages of the conquest was considered negligible and therefore not worthy of study. All right, not worthy of study. Why didn't what you want to tell us about this? Luis and Diaz Solner's seminal work, Historia de la Esclavitud Negra en Puerto Rico, the story of black slavery in Puerto Rico, provides the basis for contemporary scholarship. Diaz Soler recognized that his work was a pioneering study in constant need for revision. 20 years passed before Sud Badillo, in a groundbreaking study co-authored with Angel Lopez Cantos, Puerto Rico Negro, Black Puerto Rico, challenged 16th century Puerto Rican historiography. People of African descent have yet to be fully written into the historical text of the 17th and 18th century. So what they're basically talking about is that a lot of these so-called famous black pioneers, so-called Spanish, Portuguese, black pioneers, settlers, colonists, whatever form they came in, serving slaves, they had a deep history that helped contribute to the colonization history of these Europeans colonizing America, and they got written out of history. That's what they're letting you know. They got kind of not written about. Why? Why? If they were African, why would you know why? So wouldn't you want to continue with that fake story of them being African? Because if they really talked about these people and we actually looked for their background, we would realize they were Europeans they were bringing, not Africans. That's why. I'm telling you straight up. I'm telling you straight up. No holding bars today. I'm being straight up with you guys today. It's not conjecture theories. I'm talking about from what I have proven and what I have shown you guys. You can go back to my previous videos. Freed and free black men accompanied the Spanish explorers. All right, freed and free black men accompanied the Spanish explorers in their expeditions to various regions of the Americas. All right, were they just slaves, or they were slaves? Could you mail this? That's because the white Spaniards were bringing black slaves from Africa. Could you mail? That's why. Oh, they were only slaves. It says here they did so as fellow explorers. So there were slaves who were explorers. There were slaves who were soldiers, manual laborers, and servants. All right, so the explorers, conquistador explorers, they ain't exploring nothing. They ain't exploring nothing. They're conquering. Starts the hijack with that word explorers. We already know. We already know. That's a hijack. Conquistador. They came as explorers, everything. They came in as everything because it was people being people. People happen to have dark complexion. These people happen to be so-called Negro. That doesn't make them evil or bad or good. It's the person's soul, their heart, who they are that makes them what their actions, not their complexion. You guys are understanding? So they did so as fellow explorers. They came as explorers. The free black population consisted of Latinos. Who's the Latinos? Same Sephardic Jews, Muslim Moors. These were the ones they were sending, replacing the so-called Indians with first. That's what the Spanish did when Charles V said, hey, you can send 4,000 so-called Negroes over to the Americas. He was talking about Latinos and whatever he had under his possession under so-called Negroes. And if we look at the slave records and what the Spanish and Portuguese were doing and really enslavement, we'll know that the other people were American Indians. We've proven that before. What Africans? Yeah, some Africans got caught up in this. Yes, but it wasn't mainly them. It was mainly so-called dark-skinned complexion, and even, we already know, light-skinned, pale-skinned, so-called white Europeans and American Indians that made up this whole slave narrative, or people who were doing the free labor. All right? The free black population, these people they were calling black, or free blacks that they were coming with Columbus and the Spanish and all these other so-called explorers. They were basically the same people. It was their friends, relatives, their servants, their captains. They try to separate them. They made you think that there were some white people bringing some African descendants who were living already in Spain for like 200-300 years, and they already had spoken Spanish. They dressed like Europeans. They spoke Ladino. Their whole culture was European, but they wanted you to think they were African. They wanted you to think they were African just because of their complexion. The free black population consisted of Latinos, though. These were free Iberian black men who served the interests of the Spanish conquerors. Remember, the Spanish conquerors, the ones who were in charge, those type of Spanish were the Catholics, Roman Catholic Empire. And they were using many of these Sephardic Moorish people as servants, as their navigators, as their interpreters, port Jews, as their traders with the Indians, as their plantation operating owners, all that. The Spanish elite in Puerto Rico. Okay, so listen to that. I'm sorry. So they were serving the Spanish conquerors and were rewarded with gold and indigenous slaves. Yeah, more and more war. They were also in it too. Just because they were being put under this so-called bondage doesn't make them likely to not go enslave somebody else. I don't know the reasons why, if somebody was in bondage, why they go do it to another person. But I guess survival was survival at that time, right? Survival for your family and your people, right? The Spanish elite in Puerto Rico and Hispaniola gathered financial resources and arms to engage in the capture of the indigenous population. Vaquianos, hunters, and guides with an intimate knowledge of indigenous settlements were dedicated to hunting and capturing Carib slaves. Expeditions to Lucayas, the Bahamas. We already got the description of the Caribs. We know they were so-called black. We got the description of the Lucayans. We know they were swarthy, so-called dark complexioned people as well. The Cumana, the Lesser Antilles, and the South American coast resulted in the enslavement and death of huge segments of indigenous populations. Who were the Spanish and Portuguese really enslaving? American Indians when they were over here, by hundreds of thousands of them. They didn't all go extinct, all right? They want you to believe that. A lot of them were put into these plantations. They have descendants today. They're being called Latinos or so-called black or African Americans. Records provide us with accounts of free black men who established themselves within the military and obtained fortunes. All right, free black men who obtained fortunes, right, by conquering you, right, American Indians, as they joined the European colonizers in the exploitation of the Americas, right? So again, let me reword that because I don't want to say conquering you, because you could be the Sephardic you conquer and you could also be the American Indian getting conquered. Yeah, you have both genealogies. Most of you that are hearing me right now, whether you want to believe it or not, prove it to me wrong then. Prove me wrong then. It's all right, you don't have to. Yeah, you're right. You don't have to. But we all know what's up. We know true history. All right. Got to show receipts nowadays. So they made fortunes, right? More and more war. More and more war. Anton Mexia. So it's going to list a couple of these so-called black conquistadors or auxiliaries. It says Ante Mexia. Look at that. Mexia or Mexia. 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 Remember, he's a Spaniard with that surname Mexia, which is coming from. Could it have some links to ancient America? Quite possibly. Quite possibly. Just like what we were reading earlier about Toltexus, right? Toltexus, southwestern region of US. All right, could it be? Could it be? Maybe. We're gonna eventually get into all these things, man. We're gonna dig, we're gonna continue to dig. We ain't going nowhere. We just got more and more info. The information is infinite. The information is infinite. Antoine Mejia, a free black man, provided services to Nicolas de Ovando, governor of Hispaniola, and an assistant to Cross Bowman. He was later listed as an encomendero, meaning a slave master. An encomendero was a slave master. Comendero got an encomienda, meaning a grant, a land grant. An encomienda was a land grant that you had to have. Basically, the main reason for an encomienda was to establish a plantation with slaves or with free labor. That was the whole purpose of an encomendero. That was his title. That was his job. Encomendero engaged in the extraction of precious metals with 3 indigenous slaves. His son, Francisco Mejia, gained prominence as a soldado, as a soldier, a cazador de fortuna, and as a hunter of fortune, whatever that means. That sounds like killing Indians to me. Engaging in battles against the indigenous population, like I just said, who? Free black people. Free black, so-called black. Free black people killing who? Indigenous populations. More and more war. You gotta understand. All right? And don't think this is only happening in Mexico and the Caribbean and the Spanish and Portuguese only are doing this. No. We have already gone Francis Drake, right? Check out the previous videos, right? Francis Drake. Who were these English? Who were these Irish? Who were these Huguenots? Let's not forget. There's no way of running or escaping this. Eventually, it's going to get to your genealogy some way if you're in the Americas. If you're from the Americas, there's no way from running from this. What we have to do is embrace this and learn who we are, understand our genealogy. They told us a lot of things. They lied to us. They made up so much things that we got so much confusion, and we just generalize and generalize here and generalize that way. We learn a new thing, then we generalize that way. We learn another new thing, then we generalize. I was doing it myself too for many years. I learned to stop generalizing and just keep learning. Keep learning. We're master students. We ain't master teachers. We're master students. So again, we got these Mejias, free black Latinos, Europeans who are doing this for the indigenous population. He was also was a noted slave catcher, right? The Mejias, most likely Sephardic Jews, Moors, the Mejias who are Moors, Moorish people, were noted slave catchers. He had hunted down and captured Carib slaves for price. Testimony regarding the services of Mejia revealed that for 1 year he was contracted for 44 pesos de oro to capture caciques and indios. I caciques, chiefs, and indios. He was contracted beginning November 8, 1512, in an attempt to obtain indigenous laborers from the cacica Luisa, a female queen, a female leader. He was reportedly killed by Caribs in 1513. That's what you get, man. Caribs don't play, right? Caribs don't play for real because Caribs were doing their own invasion before the Europeans arrived. Oh, let's not forget about that history. But yeah, that's, again, more and more war before even the Europeans got here. If we're talking about complexion. His father, Anton Mejia, appealed to the authorities for payment due for his son's services. It is interesting to know that Puerto Rican historians have romanticized Mejia's untimely death among the Taino, the indigenous Arawakan-speaking people of Puerto Rico, by arguing that in act of courage, Mejia attempted to protect the Cacica Luisa from the warring Caribs. So yeah, they made up that history. He was actually trying to enslave everybody. He ain't trying to be friendly with nobody. They're letting you know. They made up that whole thing. Now, continuing real quick, it says in addition to the importation of these free men, Black Latinos were imported as domestic servants. Who was the real servants? Indentured servants, encomiendas, producers of subsistence crops. Black Latinos, Europeans, laborers in the sugar ingenious, 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 and extractors of gold. They were really good at sugar plantation and extracting gold. Who? The Moors, of course. Sephardic Moriscos, cryptos. They were really good at that. Latinos were often preferred over indigenous slaves as skilled manual laborers, given their previous experience in the Iberian Peninsula. Who were they before they got to America? They already had the metalworking, the goldsmithing, all that, the trade. They knew all that already. States the Spanish crown did not initially intend to transport African slaves to the New World. All right, what? Who said that? Via Solar states that the Spanish crown did not initially intend to transport African slaves to the New World. So when Charles V, a so-called black man, Charles V, all right, let me see. All right, let's see if they give it to us. Charles V, Holy Roman Emperor, Charles V. All right, Holy Roman Emperor, Charles V, Catholic, Roman Catholic. The Catholics weren't just white. I get sometimes I just want to address. I'm glad I remember. So, after my videos are done and completed, you know, I get a lot of people, but the Romans this and the Romans were white, and you guys not understanding. It's not a black and white thing. It has nothing to do with that yet. Not in the 1500s, not in the 1400s, not in the 1600s, not even in the 1700s, maybe in the 1800s. We start actually getting into something like that. 1900s mostly. Charles V, right? Charles V, right? Who also comes up in that painting from Peru. That's him right there. He was actually next to all the cacicas, as you can see him right here. Carlos Quinto or Charles V. Quinto means fifth. Carlos is Charles, anglicized. All right, so-called black man. And who were the Incas? So-called black men too. Again, more on more. War, right? You guys learning? We're following? Let's go back. Where were we? Where were we? Uh, okay, good. So again, Charles V, he said, hey, I'm gonna give you guys permission. We're talking about a black man. So when he's saying you can grab 4,000 Negroes with when he himself is a so-called Negro, you know, Negro means something else. And he was talking about these Latinos and the Indians he had because why Diaz Solar states that the Spanish crown did not initially intend to transport African slaves to the New World. The Spanish crown, this guy right here, he didn't intend to go to Africa to transport so-called slaves to America. It was the Latinos and the people he already had under his control or bondage, which were American indigenous people. Since the time Columbus and them came, they already doing it. All right, it wasn't Africans. Repetitive, repetitive information. Hopefully, it sticks to you. However, by 1501, the crown had authorized the importation of black slaves. The instructions sent to Nicolas de Ovando stated that Moors, Jews, or persons recently Christianized could not travel to the Americas, with the exception of Spanish-born and Christianized slaves, Latinos. Except the Latinos, not the ones who are converted, not the ones who are cooperating and being Christianized, not the cryptos. Let's send the ones we are just straight up calling slaves and Latinos. The enslaved Latino was forced to work side by side with the indigenous slaves in the extraction of mineral resources. Again, who were these so-called black Europeans working with side by side? Indigenous slaves. Where's the Africans? Where's the Africans? I'm asking you right now, listening to this. Where's the Africans? In the extraction of mineral resources. Sued Badillo argues that the rigor and vicissitudes of mining life influenced the two Ladino uprisings in Puerto Rico. In 1503, Nicolas de Ovando requested that the Ladino population be barred from entering the Americas. Why? Because upon their arrival, guess what they were doing? These Latinos, I'm a black Europeans, right? They joined the Indians and became fugitives from the law. Can I get a maroon? Can I get a maroon? Can I get a hashtag maroons? Who's the maroons? Who's these marranos, maroons? Who's these runaways? Yo, this whole time they were telling us in school that all these so-called Negro were Africans, right? And they were escaping and running away and becoming the more maroons community, the maroonish community. Well, we know that they were, but they were actually European. They were mixing with indigenous populations, and the indigenous people were helping them get to their locations. Because again, these are Europeans; they didn't know the land. They needed help from the Latinos. They were marrying with them, joining forces with them. All right. However, by 1505, Ovando had requested that the importation of Latinos be reestablished in Hispaniola. Latinos joined forces with the Arawak population in an effort to overthrow Spanish rule, meaning the Catholics, because Latinos are Spanish. They ain't Africans. Remember, their DNA goes back. These Sephardic Jews, Moorish people, go back more to Europe than African. In 1514, a hurricane devastated the island. Food supplies were scarce. The availability of indigenous labor declined, and the Latinos were forced to work in the mines. They were forced to work in the mines. Who's again being enslaved? They were forced to work in the mines. All right, hold on, guys. Guess what? I got a requester manual review for my video that we have live right now. They're saying it's not suitable for ads again. This video is being reviewed to determine whether it's suitable for most advertisements. Yeah, that's just my story of my life here on YouTube. Yeah, we're kind of rewriting history. We're exposing all their lies. We're exposing the owners of this company, their lies. That's why they hate on me. you know, under fair use, I should be able to do this. We ain't talking about anything that's offensive. We're just talking about history and reading books here. We're just reading a book. We're reading books here. Why can be so not suitable, as they're saying? Why can I read a book, a historic book that you can read in school? Why is this not suitable? And I want you guys to really pay attention to that. Why they come after me so much? When you got all these other channels going live, they don't get bothered with when they're fighting, when they're swearing, when they're calling people names, when they're acting like the master teachers and all that, and just talking about just talking for hours, you know. So, all right, if this video comes down, you guys will know why. Like, if it gets interrupted in any way, hopefully not. But I just got that email right now letting me know that it has to be reviewed. So I tell them, okay, review it. And sorry for interrupting. Let's get back to the presentation. Get back to where it was. Just a second. Yeah, so dodge the hijack. Thank you. Thanks. I appreciate that. They make it really hard for me. But your support really helps me keep going, honestly. All right, where were we? We got Latinos mixing in with Indians, running away, right? Going to remote areas. We're talking about Maroons, right? And so far, we ain't talking about no Africans. All right? I want you guys to really pay attention to this when people are talking about Gula this and Gula that and Maroon this in Jamaica and Maroon that and I'm half African and I'm African and this. What African? What Maroons? We're talking about Black Europeans. And we're not just talking about Indians. I want you guys to really, also pay attention to yourself. Dodge your own hijack sometimes. Sometimes we gotta be like, dodge your own hijack. I gotta dodge my own hijack sometimes, right? Because not all Maroons were Indians. We know that, man. There was a lot of Black Europeans running away too. Not just Spanish, Irish, Huguenots, all these people, Dutch, Germans, Palatines, they were running away and being called Negroes too eventually when they were mixing and all that. Just start making up stuff, you'll be good. What does that mean? Oh, I get it. Yeah.